spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty above the fruit.
Well, good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the legislative chambers. There is also an automatic external defibrillator that is available on the back wall of the legislative chambers. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will begin with the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Kavanaugh, here. Commissioner Duda, here. Commissioner Kraft, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Madam Chair.
Here, item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, May 16, 2017. And item B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, June 6, 2017 as a date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property. Is there a motion to approve A and B?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Duda, second by Commissioner Boyle. Please vote.
Motion passes.
Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, there are three resolutions. Item D, denial of 2017 permissive exemption applications. Actually, E and D have been requested to be laid over until our June 13th meeting. If I could get a motion to lay those two items over.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote.
One moment, please. Okay, thank you. Motion passes.
And then the last resolution, item F, and adjourn. Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Duda. Please vote.
Sorry, one more time, Commissioner. We'll get this. Okay, thank you. Motion passes.
Next, we'll go to the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle,
Here.
Commissioner Kavanaugh,
Here.
Commissioner Duda,
Here.
Commissioner Kraft, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Madam Chair.
Here. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, May 16, 2017. And item B, approval of claims submitted for payment processed through Tuesday, May 30, 2017. Is there a motion to approve A and B? Motion by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Duda. Please vote.
I'll be abstaining because there's a check. in my
Okay.
company.
Commissioner Kavanaugh. There we go. Motion passes.
Next is the consent agenda, items A through I. Please note A has been stricken from the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Move for the approval of items B through I.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I have a comment.
Yep. Okay, Commissioner Boyle.
Yes, I On item E, I know there's an engagement letter for auditing services in Douglas County, and I believe this was, was there an audit committee that looked at this, Joe? Okay, well, I raised some objections to it. I thought the letter that was telling the previous auditor that they didn't get the bid was a little bit, I wish that they had had a chance to make corrections, I'll put it that way. We have so few minority and women contractors with Douglas County that I thought I'd like to, in the future, have a closer look at what may have gone wrong and how serious it was. So I just bring that up. I'd like item E taken out because I'm not going to vote for it. The rest of them I will.
With that, will the maker of the motion agree to B through I minus E?
That E be treated separately, yeah.
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Are we going to revisit this now? Because I have a question on one of the health department.
Go ahead.
Okay. And I think Dr. Poor is here.
Good morning. Adi Poor, Health Department.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I just was wondering on number 9, approval of the affiliation agreement with Creighton University College of Arts and Sciences regarding internship experience for students. Could you expand a little bit on that for us, please?
Well, this is often a requirement that we are being asked by universities to see if they could have an experience at our institution. And that may come in different avenues, and for us it is just good to have an agreement in place before we actually get any intern requests, so to say. But it is a whole variety of things. They may be working on a survey document, they may be working in epidemiology, they may be working in the clinic. So it's a variety of issues. And we have actually these type of agreements with just about all the universities here in town.
Very good. And I noticed that there is no budgeted amount for this. Is that correct?
No, that's correct, because, we hope to get something out of that internship. They are not paying us anything, and we are not paying the interns anything.
Okay. There are a series of these. Number 8 is with the University of Nebraska Omaha Environmental Studies Program, and number 10 is the Walden University regarding graduate student field experience. Could you expand a little bit on the different emphasis between these 3 initiatives?
Correct. So Walden University, we have had agreements with for a long time. This is actually to have an experience in our STD clinic. These are usually graduate students who may live in Omaha, we have this relationship with Walden for a long time. So that's what that is all about. And the environmental studies is probably more in our environmental areas like air pollution, where they could go out and see where the monitors are, learn about the systems that we have in place. Often these students need to do a special project, and then they come to us and say, do you have a special project that we can work on? So I think why you are seeing these all today on the agenda is that we as a department have reviewed all of them internally that we have them now on a drive. We have a little bit more a cohesive project or program around these internships, because there are too many, and if you become too loose about this, you are losing your attention over this. So I think that's why you see them, Commissioner Kavanaugh, on the agenda today. We have made a concerted effort to kind of see if they need to be renewed, if we still want to continue to work with those universities, make them consistent with the county attorney to look at them, that there is no liability in them. So that's why it maybe looks a little bit different to you today.
And how long have these been ongoing?
Some of them are new, because what you are seeing, the universities are more and more requiring that their students have field experience, especially the University of Nebraska College of Public Health is in our facility all the time. So we need to have agreements that we really know how to move forward with them. Has to do with confidentiality, has to do if they are going to write papers, what acknowledgement is the health department going to get on those. There, you know, I have 5 all the time. And they come and they go, they do their capstones who go over 2 months, 90 days. It's a lot of work, but we are also trying to make sure that they have a good experience so that they may later on want to come and work for the health department. But also their projects needs to be something that has a barrier around it and that can be of benefit to the community.
I think that's good, and we're certainly eager to have collaborative efforts with our local higher educational institutions. Regarding that, you've probably noticed the comments in the press, particularly today in the Omaha World Herald's editorial page, regarding a potential collaboration between Douglas County and the University of Nebraska Medical Center. And I was wondering, had you been involved in those discussions at all? We're trying to iron out what exactly that means, and you would probably be a good person to be involved with that.
Thanks to you and thanks to the leadership of Commissioner Borgerson, I have been involved in those discussions, yes. And we are trying to, I think, work through it. We don't really know what that's going to look like, trying to see where the benefit will be, specifically for training for certain healthcare providers that we have or community in that manner. But we don't know what that's going to look like.
Okay. We're very interested in having those details in place before we move much further on this. Could you give us any idea relative to your department what those collaborations might look like?
Well, you know, like I said, no details are really worked out. I do think we already have a strong collaboration in that building, and that is that floor that's going to house highly infectious diseases. Those are individuals that potentially, you know, we would monitor, and so that collaboration has occurred. So, you know, I have been involved in actually writing a letter of recommendation for the university to receive that grant to build that floor. So there definitely is a close collaboration. On the other aspect of training, I'm not sure at this time, and I think we have put out some ideas together with the health center how that collaboration may work, how that training may benefit each other, but we have not been asked about specifics on it.
But you're involved in ongoing discussions relative to this right now.
I've been involved in 2 discussions. I've gotten a tour of the building, and then we have another meeting where we actually had some questions of how could we really work together, how would this look like.
I think that we're all aware that there's considerable public interest in this, and when we discussed this before, I don't know if it was Commissioner Morgan or Commissioner Boyle who brought up the idea of fleshing out this collaboration, and I think that we need to have that you know, pretty definite before we move too much further on this initiative. I don't know if the county attorney is preparing documents for us. I don't think that we as commissioners have seen anything at this point relative to what that collaboration will look like. But I, for one, am going to need that before we move too much further on this initiative. I mean, there's been talk, and I encourage that talk, about collaboration, but the devil's in the details.
About IXL?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I think you probably saw the editorial in this morning's paper.
I didn't get a chance.
Oh, I'm sure that Mr. Burbach can provide you with a copy of the ideas of collaboration between Douglas County, specifically Douglas County Health Center, and UNMC are linked to this initiative, and those, I think, need to be discussed publicly before we move too much further, and made definite if we are going to move too much further. Thank you.
Seeing no other lights, there is a motion to approve consent agenda items B through I. Again, A's been removed, and then taking E separately. No further questions or comments. Please vote.
Motion passes.
And now is there a motion for item E? Motion by Commissioner Duda, second by Commissioner Kavanaugh. Please vote.
One moment, please. Okay, thank you. Motion passes.
There is one recognition of a county employee who is retiring, Diane Poteet. She is not going to be with us today, but she is retiring from the county attorney's office after 21 years of service to Douglas County, and we wish her well. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Duda. Please vote. Didn't hear you say second. Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, there is a couple of public hearings. The first public hearing is to discuss the county's general fire protection policy and the setting of the fire district boundaries for the area previously within the corporate village limits of the village of Boys Town, located on the west side of 144th Street between West Dodge Road and the property line of Millard North District School District, and to the east, the boundary line to the west up to the next to Wycliffe and Piedmont Housing Addition property lines. This was actually brought to us by the Millard Fire Department, and they are here for discussion. Diane, do you want to just give, or Teresa, do you want to give a little background of, because of the development there and the basically de-annexing that section of property, the county is responsible for setting those fire boundaries?
Teresa, York County Attorney's Office. Yeah, this is a rather unique situation. It doesn't come up very often, apparently. Boys Town has taken a piece of land and taken it out of the village, and so we now have a piece of unincorporated land within Douglas County that is not within the village of Boys Town, and it has not yet been annexed by the city of Omaha. There's a statute in Chapter 35-517 that says the county board shall set the boundaries of all rural and suburban fire districts so that any land that's outside of an incorporated village or city gets included in a fire district. And so that's why we're here today. The Millard Fire District brought this forward under that statute and is asking the board to consider possibly placing that land that's not in an incorporated village or city within their fire district. That statute also requires the board to look at a levy calculation to make sure that it meets the requirements of the levies among the various fire districts. And then the board has to have a public hearing. Public hearing has to occur before June 1, so that's why we're here today. And then this board needs to make their determination before July 1st.
Okay. Commissioner Boyle.
Yes, Council, I'm curious, not that I'm thinking about this, but what is the alternative if we didn't do what needs to be done? What happens then?
Well, I think, and I'll let Millard speak to this, I believe that there may have been a prior instance where they went under 35-514 through annexation, where the fire district can do that as well. So I think there is an alternative way to do that, although I can't give Millard legal advice with regards to that. But I do believe there's another statute that could be used to possibly add this land to a fire district.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Duda.
I would just like to point out, during the public hearing, we also have the Boys Town Fire Department present, and the alternative is which fire department will be providing the fire and rescue protection for this area until it becomes annexed.
I should have asked you. Thank you.
The county board has had this authority for quite a while.
And it's actually made some of our neighboring departments nervous that I was going to abuse it, that I could be a part of changing lines on where volunteer fire departments serve, and I, of course, would never do that. This is the first time that we've run into where we do have a decision to make.
I've been nervous about that too, Claire.
This is the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on this?
Commissioners, my name is Kevin Edwards. I'm the Chief Administrator of the Millard Suburban Fire Protection District. And this has come up once before when Boys Town sold property that was north of 130 or north of Dodge Street between 132nd and 144th. And at that time, we did use Section 35-514 and annexed that property into the Millard Fire District, which was adjacent to it, and provided service to that area until it was annexed by the City of Omaha. That happened in the mid-1990s. This is the first time it's come up since then, and our read of the statutes put it more in line with an area that was not in a city or a village, and that it needed to be in a fire district. And we made our proposal based on the logistics of providing service to that area. The area in question is a part of a new SID that includes the DeMarco Farm, which is south of Pacific, west of 144th. And it makes sense to us to have one SID provided service in the same manner as the other half would be. And so that's why we made the proposal.
No other questions or comment? Anyone else wishing to speak during this? Do you want to speak?
My name is Colin Bagwell. I represent Nauto Companies. We're the developer representing the owner, New West Farms LLC. Our long-term goal is to be annexed into the city and to be under the Omaha Fire Department. And in the interim, we believe that the Millard Fire Department is a good fit for us, so we have no objection to this proposal.
Excuse me, did you say the city was going to annex this? What was that comment? You're waiting for them, or?
Eventually, long-term.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
the whole
All right.
project.
Couldn't hear you. Thank you.
Commissioner Duda?
Does cost for you factor into this decision? I mean, it seems like the fire departments would not be charging you the same amount for the fire and rescue protection. And so I'm very interested in your preference.
Well, I mean, cost always factors into everything. But no, I think that the Millard Fire District's mill levy we're okay with the mill levy.
Okay.
That they represented to us.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, no one else wishing to speak? Commissioner Duda?
I just wanted to ask, I mean, Chief Singh is here from Boys Town, and I didn't know if he wanted to speak or not. This would be the appropriate time, John, if you wanted to say anything.
Yes, I'm John Singh. I'm the Public Safety Director and also the Fire Chief for the Village of Boys Town. No, we have no objection to Millard Suburban District taking over the district itself. But in the interim, we'd like to offer to the owners itself and to the county board the fire and rescue service as we've been providing as of today until such time it officially becomes the responsibility of the Millard Suburban Fire District. So if that's a possibility, we'd like to have that happen. And that's free of charge.
And having the interim, if it's going to go to Millard, then they could actually we could set it today, correct? Take action today that Millard covers that area now?
Possibly. And the reason I say possibly is the two things the board is supposed to look at today in addition to considering proposals put before it, is the general fire policy of the county, and then also this tax levy calculation, which is in 35.517.3. I don't have, and I think finance and perhaps Joe and county admin in our office could work together if we don't have those numbers today, is to make sure that whatever boundaries are drawn, that the fire districts all comply with this calculation related to the tax levy.
Okay, but again, our action, if any, today would be setting the interim then fire protection until the July 1 or July whatever the last date you said was to set it permanently?
The purpose of, if I may, the purpose of today is to hold the public hearing, which we have to do before the June 1st deadline. And then the statute just says, after that thereupon the county board shall make a determination and make a written order of that determination, which they file with Dan Esch's office by July 1. And so I think if the board wanted to, they could rule today, assuming it complied with the tax levy calculation. If we're not sure if it complies with the tax levy calculation, I believe the board could take some additional time to get those numbers, as long as the written order of the determination is filed with Dan Esch's office by July 1 of the year.
Okay. Commissioner Boyle?
Okay, so is this matter then, legal counsel, I'd ask you, when is this effective if we approve it today? When would this take place? What I'm concerned about is that, and I know these people handle things very well, but if there was a call for service in the area that's the subject area, who responds this afternoon?
May I address that, please?
Please.
As of right now, we're responding to the calls.
Okay, so
we actually, there's not that much property. There are, I should say, structures. It's mostly open field.
okay.
There's a few structures there. And the other reason, and again, Chief Edwards was very cooperative as well with us. We kind of like to use some of the buildings that are still there as for training for the mutual aid departments.
Good.
And in the interim, if we could have, again, the responsibility till July 1, we'll have it done and down, and then they can turn it over. But in the interim, we have no problem with it, and neither does my village board.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Well, considering we're here to discuss the county's general fire protection policy, what is the county's general fire protection policy? Is there somebody here that can address that?
Put the wet stuff on the red stuff. That's what firemen do.
Okay.
The county's not in the fire and rescue business. All we do is oversee. The districts help them with their lines and everything, but we provide no, other than 911, that kind of support, we provide no direct services.
I thought that a portion of our public safety bond issue was to help the fire departments in Douglas County with some of their equipment upgrades.
With the station alerting, yes, that was a part of it. Yes, absolutely.
But other than that, is there an overarching strategic policy in place?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So in this particular case, this property that we're discussing has been part of Boys Town. Is that right?
Yes.
And Boys Town's been providing fire protection for this property. Is that right?
Correct.
And the proposal would discontinue Boys Town providing fire protection for this property?
It would transfer it from Boys Town to the so-called Elkhorn, but remember there is no Elkhorn Fire Department, or Millard, I'm sorry, Millard Fire Department. It's actually provided by Omaha, and it's through this vehicle that Omaha is able to provide service outside the city limits. They can't do it directly. They have to contract with somebody if they're going to come outside the city limits.
And is the Omaha Fire Division represented here today?
They're not here today. I've talked with Chief Olson, and they're prepared to provide provide service to this area in the same way that they do all of our other areas within the fire district through an interlocal agreement that we have between the City of Omaha and the Omaha Fire Department, which stipulates that they provide the same level of service to our areas that they do to the city.
And Mr. Edwards, you represent the Millard Volunteer Fire Department?
The Millard Suburban Fire Protection District. We don't utilize our own fire department any longer. We do all of our services through an interlocal agreement.
Okay. So you don't actually have fire equipment or firefighters, or there's no?
No, we own fire stations and owned apparatus and stuff that we've since given the apparatus to the city. We may own more apparatus again as we continue our agreements with the city, as that apparatus might need to be replaced.
So if I understand this correctly, Boys Town, which has been providing fire protection to this area, is willing to continue to provide fire protection to this area without cost. Is that right? Sure. Without additional costs, I should say.
Yeah.
What I was saying was we would be more than happy to provide the fire and EMS protection for this area until such time that this resolution was taken over, which gives us the opportunity as well as to use that area for training in addition to that as well. Without your permission to do that training, again, I said, if you immediately turn it over to the Millard Suburban Fire District, we no longer can do the tri-mutual aid, or what we call the interlocal training with other agencies. So just due to the fact of the burning requirements and other things, you can't burn in the City of Omaha.
I see. Okay. And so what kind of time frame are you talking about?
Just looking until July 1. Actually, I've already sent the burn permits and the affidavits to Nettles Company, and we're just waiting for them to sign off on it as soon as you approve it here.
Right. I'm a little bit familiar with this property because there were a lot of gardens there.
Yes.
Right? And
there were gardens.
Yeah. I had some friends who were lucky enough to have some. So, and there are some older buildings there.
Yes.
As well. Are you planning to burn those buildings down? Or?
Yes, sir. All those homes that are along the stretch there along West Dodge Road and go into that cul-de-sac, which is called GNLA Circle, all those will be gone.
Gone and demolished?
Demolished and torn down, yes, sir.
Okay. But you were talking...
And the other barn structures, I think several of those are going to be torn down as well. I don't know exactly all of them. I think there's a couple that are going to be saved for future development, but right now, the majority of those structures are going to be gone. So basically the land's just going to be bare land while they're excavating and developing the property itself for the next probably 2 or 3 years.
Okay. So your fire department wants to use those areas for training.
Correct, sir.
Tell us a little bit about what you would actually do in terms of the training use.
Well, unfortunately, anymore it's becoming more and more difficult to find abandoned structures to train with, because again, like I said, that's the best training that you could provide for a firefighter. So the bottom line comes down to is when you have one, you really want to hold on to it as long as you possibly can. And we have been training in one of the structures for the interim before they sold the property, and we were using for interior training itself. I don't think we're going to actually burn the structures to the ground, just due to the fact they're mostly made out of cinder block. So that's going to be an impossibility. But again, like I said, we'll probably be able to do a lot of interior firefighting, and it's good training for every firefighter, especially the candidates that come on board. So, but again, like I said, that's why I was hoping that you would be able to address this for that 1 month interim time till July 1st, and then, like I said, and I've also talked to Chief Olson as well, and he's very cooperative about this as well. And again, he realizes that kind of the dilemma we're all in. I mean, again, like I said, once it goes to the City of Omaha, he can't control what the City of Omaha's requirements are as well, about burning and things like that. But if it's in kind of the interim where we're taking care of it, we can.
Very good. Thank you for that
You're
explanation. Thank you.
Commissioner Duda?
I just want, I'm trying to be clear in my mind. You guys are actually kind of saying the same thing, aren't you? I mean,
Yes.
you're amenable to what Chief Singh is suggesting, that we make this effective July 1?
Yes, we are.
And if we just make this effective July 1, everybody's happy?
In fact, if that makes Chief Singh happy, it makes me feel, happy too.
I'd love it if we could all be happy.
We've also talked about, even after that were to take place, if it was put into the Millard Fire District, that even after that, we would help facilitate the training burns and things in those buildings if he wasn't able to get them all completed by July 1st.
Very good. Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle?
You know, this is, I'm just curious from someone who could answer this, and perhaps Commissioner Duda could as well, but volunteers for the various fire departments, must they live within the area served, or could they be close by? I know it's a question of responding, but do you accept people who are near your districts as volunteers?
Yes, we do.
You do? Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Every department has their own policy,
Yeah.
and it can change from time to time. We now allow, on our department, people to live within a reasonable distance.
Right.
We used to require that they be in the district. Every department has their own autonomy on that.
I think that'd be interesting to get some word out on that, because I'm not sure people know. Maybe you do that already, but of course I live downtown. Everything west of 72nd is France to me, so.
Okay, so again, this is the public hearing. Is there anyone else wishing to speak during the public hearing?
Colin Bagwell, Noddle Companies again. I just wanted to say the landowner is amenable to that time frame of July 1st.
Great. Okay.
And that handover process.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just before I close the public hearing, again, I just want to make clear that today the action we're taking is to grant the coverage of the fire to the Boys Town Fire Department until July 1, whereas such time it then goes to the Millard Fire Department. Okay, so with that, I will close the public hearing, and I would need a motion.
Marion, if I may.
Oh, Teresa?
I apologize. Teresa, York County Attorney's Office. I don't think you have to take action with regards to Boys Town in the interim. I believe they have, and please correct me if I'm incorrect, I believe that Boys Town and the owner have an agreement in place between their two entities for Boys Town to provide interim fire coverage. And so I believe what the action the board should take is simply the inclusion of that land in the Millard Fire District as of July 1.
Okay.
And that order just needs to be to the county clerk by July 1 in order for that to be effective.
And the only reason I brought the interim part up was because there was a question as to whether or not we needed to alert the 911 center, but you're saying that's already covered because they currently cover it?
I would let Boys Town and or the landowner speak to notification to 911. I don't know the answer to that.
That just came up as a question. I want to make sure we have it covered so they know.
Yeah, as of right now, 911 still sees us as the coverage policy for both fire and EMS. As of July 1, once they take over, we'll notify the 911 center.
Okay.
But again, just so you're aware of it as well, we have an interlocal agreement with the city of Omaha with Chief Olson and them. And again, I say we respond over there in a mutual aid response as well. So
right.
So they'll always be covered.
Right. Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't take note of your service to the community. I'm sure for many years, I don't know who's served for how long and all the rest, but it's a terrific service that you provide, and I extend this to my fellow commissioner who also is involved in the Ponca area. So we appreciate what you do. It's a very important service.
With that, Teresa?
If I may, in order to assist Dan Esch's office, perhaps the board would consider, we'll draft this statute says the board issues an order rather than a resolution, so we'll call it that, and we'll draft one, and if we may set it on so that the board could approve it perhaps on June 27th as to form. The board, I think, could act today and include it and direct our office to draft the order to be put on the consent agenda for approval as to form, and that way Dan can have it for the official record and it can go in the official record of the county.
Okay. So do we have such motion?
Commissioner, or Madam Chair, would you mind, just so we get the motion correct, would you mind restating with the motion that we are passing today?
The motion today would be to direct the county attorney's office to work with the clerk's office to produce a order that will go on our consent agenda on June 27th.
Okay.
Do you need a motion to that effect? I would move for the approval.
Second.
No further questions or comments? Please vote.
What date are we talking?
It'll
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item B, this is the public hearing for the transfer of budget dollars that are set aside in salary adjustment account for future salary increases. This also provides additional budget dollars for budget increases with revenue offsets for the County Drug Forfeiture Fund. It also increased budgets for the Assessor Register of Deeds, District Court, State Institutions Fund, and the Employee Fringe Benefit in the amount of $614,000. These are not budgeted. And Joe, do you want to give a little background or further background on any of these?
Yes. You know, we do 2 budget supplements over the course of the year. This is the second one that we do in mid to late May that really gets us across the finish line for June 30th, in that these departments have requested that they need this money to get through the rest of the current fiscal year. So what it is there's $27,000 from the salary adjustment account that's going into the corrections budget to reflect the settlement of a EULA contract within the corrections area. So that $27,000, like I said, is funded through salary adjustment. Then from the general fund, there's 3 departments that have requested additional funding to get them through year end. The first is Assessor Register of Deeds, who's requesting $80,000, and that's due to the current year, when we were doing their budget a year ago, that there were some reductions to their requested budget. Second is District Court, which is requesting $50,000, and that's due to an increased caseload and some high-profile trials that required the jury to be sequestered, and just additional events that required additional funding because of those high-profile trials. And the third one is employee fringe benefits. When we did the budget for this year a year ago, we were assuming that premiums would in average increase about 4%, and they actually wound up increasing 5%, and since the county pays in general about 80 to 85% of the health insurance premiums, this is something that has to be funded through employee fringe benefits. So in total, there's $380,000 for the county general fund, which would be incremental to the budget. And then there's 2 other funds. There's the County Drug Forfeiture Fund. There's been a significant increase in funding from the state for this. And given that, the county attorney has requested, since they're getting this significant increase in funding, that we increase the expense budget, as they have some areas they like to spend that money on. So, but this is a funded increase, so it won't impact the overall amount required for the budget. And the last one is the State Institutions Fund, which has been driven by an increase in the number of people sent to the state institutions for psychiatric evaluations. That was up considerably this year. Again, there were a couple high-profile cases that required the psychiatric evaluation. So that, in order to pay the bills to the state, would be an increase in the budget of $164,000, and that is not funded. So that's kind of the summary of what this request is about.
Commissioner Morgan?
So, Joe, how do we take these separately so that it's not just a bundle? Is that possible?
I believe that's possible. I think that any of these 6 requests could be, this resolution could be amended to increase or decrease any specific department or organization.
Do we need Teresa to comment?
I don't think so. Teresa, your county attorney's office.
Okay. So why don't we do them one at a time, is my suggestion. And
Sure.
why don't you, if you have I don't want to put you on the
No,
spot.
I'm fine with that.
So let's take them one at a time,
Okay.
if that's okay with the other commissioners. Perfect. All right. So the easy one might be the county attorney, which has the funds, and let's talk about that if you want to start there.
I think that's pretty straightforward. There's been a significant increase in funding from the state of Nebraska through certain seized funds, I believe, and that's flown into that account. The original expenditure budget, I think, was like $6,000 or $8,000, and there's significant money has come in, so the county attorney's saying, well, we have the funding for this, and there's needs that we could put this money towards, so he's requested that we increase the budget this year to meet those needs. But as I said, this is funded from those increased proceeds.
Okay, and then let's be sure we watch those extra funds for next year's budget, that we
Yeah,
should
and
have
we
that
talked, they're
discussion
handled
later.
in the budget, yes.
But I'd make a motion that we go ahead.
Is this
And-
the state institutions fund?
No, this is the county drug forfeiture
Oh,
fund.
county drug forfeiture fund, okay.
So
All right.
I'd make a motion that we go ahead, and I would assume, Joe, that's your recommendation
Yes.
also.
Okay, Commissioner Kavanaugh?
There's not a
Oh,
second,
I'm
I
sorry.
don't think.
Is there a Commissioner Duda seconded it? Okay, Commissioner Kavanaugh?
So, Joe, I'm just looking at the document here that breaks this out, and the amount that we're talking about here, that Commissioner Morgan referenced, is the county drug forfeiture increase in funding $70,000 amount? Is that
Yes,
right?
that's what we're talking about.
Okay. So, if I understand you correctly, more has come in than was anticipated or budgeted to this fund.
Yeah, I think the funding is actually over $100,000 greater than what was in the budget.
And as a result, you want to take that, I guess you would call it overage, which is the better part of the $70,000, and do what with it?
I'm not sure the exact, this is a request from the county attorney, who there are guidelines to spend against any forfeiture fund, and they've looked at things that meet those guidelines for spending drug forfeiture money, and I have identified $70,000 that they could spend against those. In terms of the exact things, I don't know the detail.
Okay, but the administrative effect of us approving the $70,000, this $70,000 would be transferred from the county drug forfeiture fund to the county attorney's budget. Is that right?
No, it would still, all forfeiture funds have to be spent out of that separate fund. So it is just increasing the county drug forfeiture fund by $70,000. But the county attorney oversees that fund. So, they make the decisions on how to spend it. But because, like I said, of the regulations regarding forfeiture funds, it would have to stay within that organization and that separate fund.
Okay. So using that mechanism, the county attorney would determine how to use that $70,000. Is that right?
That's correct.
And does our county attorney representative have any information on how that $70,000 would be used?
Teresa, your county attorney's office, I can't give you specifics, but I know that there are extensive rules regarding the expenditure, and I know our office always complies with those, but I can't give you specific items at this time.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think we all recall that a few weeks ago, the county attorney came before us on a budgetary matter. And I guess my ultimate question is, would some of this $70,000 play into some of what we discussed a few weeks ago relative to the county attorney's budget request?
That's why I kind of mentioned that we want to keep this in mind when we do the budget in a few weeks, or the county attorney's budget, have some of that discussion at a later time.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking, but, you know, we're talking about that money being used in this year's.
Yeah,
budget,
there's a
not
fair amount of
next year.
restrictions, and I think it has to go against needs that are drug enforcement related.
And if I may, those dollars cannot be used to supplant your existing budget. So whatever the issues or the needs are of the county attorney, it would be above and beyond what they're currently doing.
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
fairly restrictive.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen this on the bigger federal drug forfeiture fund too, the amount of regulations that go against it, and this is monitored and audited on an annual basis.
I was just going to affirm what Commissioner Borgeson said, is that this is similar, very similar to what the sheriff does with his forfeiture fund, which is much larger, but there's no supplanting involved, so he can't use it for any salary increases. Or usually what it is things, as Joe said, that are directly related to the prosecution of those types of offenses.
Any further? Okay.
Right.
All right. So we had a motion
And a second.
and a
from
second. We
Clay.
had a motion by Commissioner Morgan, a second by Commissioner Duda to increase that county drug forfeiture fund by $70,000. Good question. Nope. So I'll close the public hearing. And now, take the motion. Yeah,
I so moved.
okay.
For approval.
Okay.
On the
Please.
county attorney. only.
Please vote.
One moment, please.
Motion passes.
Okay, Commissioner Morgan, did you want to go on with the individual ones?
Yeah, what do you want to take next, Joe? Okay.
The assessor register of deeds was 80,000,
Yes.
and this is an increase in her current budget, correct?
That would be, yes, to get us through the year. That'll end June 30th.
Okay, is there a motion?
And the reason?
I just have a short explanation about that, her spending, her budget. She had requested considerably more money in last year's budget, and her budget was kept flat. But I think that the assessor register of deeds is here, and she'd be much better qualified to speak to it than I would.
Commissioner Boyle?
Yes, I as a courtesy, gave the Register of Deeds assessor 3 items that I intend to bring up, just so there's clarification of the need for these funds. And so I suppose if you would, Ms. Badiato, come to the podium, be helpful. I asked her about when there was an employee who was fired, one of the rationales was that it would save money, and so I would like to know how much money was saved. I think also the operation of the GIS system, we tried to take it out of the budget, and it didn't happen. She said she would find some way to fund it. And so I think there's a cost savings if we could move that over to the county GIS rather than having a separate office. They could use the talents in GIS to expand further. The GIS county office could, so I think it would be a good move, but we can't get it done. And then the real nagging one is there was a party that apparently cost some money, $8,000 or so, and I think we need to hear about it, because if you're asking for $80,000 and we've got these other items in there, I'd like to know if those could be used to offset the request.
Diane Badiato, Assessor Register of Deeds. Before I address the specific questions of Mr. Boyle, we're going to take a little walk down memory lane so I can refresh everybody's memory on how we got to where we are today. If you look back to either 2012 or 2013, the legislature passed a bill that mandated the largest counties over 150,000 population to have preliminary meetings from January 15th through the end of February, and that was a mandate that went into effect the next year. During that time, the previous administration came to this board and requested, ascertained that they would need $500,000 in additional budgets to be able to process these preliminary meetings. In the 13-14 budget, this board approved $250,000 additional in the previous administration's budget, and again in 2014-15, the additional $250,000 was also increased in that budget year. Fast forward to the new administration taken over in January of 15, we requested a budget that would have included that type of money, and we were reduced the $250,000 from our proposed budget that year. 16-17, we were also decreased $253,000 in our proposed budget. Now, mind you, I first want to say this is the first time after 13 budgets that I've ever come to this board for a supplemental request. So I feel like we've been very frugal in our budget process for since 2005, and we continue to do so. Back to the $250,000. So each year in the last 2 years, having $500,000 now depleted from our request, we're back to 4 years ago in 13-14. We still have the preliminary meeting cost. And that ebbs and flows. We still have the salary cost. I cannot be responsible for the use or misuse of that $500,000 that was awarded to the previous administration, but I am the victim of having it depleted in the last 2 years. So we don't have any records about where that $500,000 was spent. All we know that it isn't there for operating expenses. During those years of budget reductions, the expenses such as salaries, overtime to meet state mandates, for example, preliminary meetings, also the changes to the personal property exemption requires lots of labor-intensive changes that we had last year and again this year in just the personal property process. Growing homestead exemption. With the baby boomers coming of age, we have a lot of additional homestead exemption applications. Whether they qualify or not, it's still a process that we have to monitor and go through every year. So we have just like there again a perfect storm in needing this $80,000. To try to remain, last year we were very fortunate. I'm very lucky to have an assistant deputy that keeps very close track of our budgeting process down to the penny and keeps very good records, so we know exactly where all of our money goes. We've diligently watched expenses. We've reduced and purchased fewer supplies and equipment. And as far as to talk about one of your questions about reducing the management staff, we knew last year we skated through and we just barely got through the budget, and I was very proud of that because it took a lot of concessions and a lot of tightening the ropes to be able to do that with having such a huge reduction to our proposed ask. With increased contract maintenance dollars that go up every year, our expenses rise. So to be able to keep a handle on that has been very, very successful. When it came this year, at the beginning of the year, we knew we were really going to be in dire straits when we were cut from our proposed budget $253,000 again. I do know why now that was, and it's because of the fact of the GIS desire to eliminate that from my office and put it with the city-county GIS. And it just happened that was the same amount that really comprised that section's salary. So we knew what type of writing was trying to be on the wall, but we knew probably we would have to come for a supplement. Through different channels of research, it was decided, or not decided, but it was the opinion that it can't just arbitrarily go away. Last year when this topic came up initially, I supplied this board with a full excerpt of all the different job duties in my GIS department. GIS is only one facet of what they do, but it's a very important facet because we're required by law to maintain the cadastral maps of the entire county. And those cadastral maps now with technology include the GIS portion. Some of the topics that they work with and some of the activities they work with is similar to the Boys Town development that you were just talking about earlier. They're responsible for completing the plapping, setting out the lots through those plats and getting them into our cadastrals and into our CAMA system. So it's not just a matter of GIS. They have a lot of other property maintenance tasks to do, and I had supplied you with that complete list last summer. If you'd like that list again, I'd be more than glad to oblige you with that, but like I said, it was sent to you last year. So that's the answer on the GIS. As far as the staffing, we knew early on we were going to be in trouble toward the end of this year because of the drastic cuts. We tried to muddle along, and after the first of the year, it came to the awareness that it wasn't going to happen. And so as a diligent manager, I have to start looking for cuts. The cut we made was from the management staff was the most appropriate cut to make rather than eliminating 2 of the worker bees. The worker bees are the ones with limited resources in our staff anyway. I was not about to even put us in worse situation by having to eliminate 2 working staff members to equal the 1 management staff member. So it was a decision that even though it was only for half the budget year, the total budget for that salary is about $75,000. So going into July, that will be a savings going forward of $75,000. I realize that's a drop in the bucket for a budget of $5 million, but every little bit counts. So that's where we're at on that. If you want to address the employee recognition activity that we had last January, I'd be glad to regurgitate that again if you'd like me to. We have it every year. It was an employee recognition. We give out our yearly longevity certificates for people who have been here 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 45 years. So it's a collective camaraderie, a thank you and appreciation luncheon for my staff. With a staff of 80, we felt it was the best opportunity to be able to get everybody together. And that's pretty much it.
Commissioner Boyle, did you have anything?
Well, I do, if I could ask. First of all, the employee who was relieved when that happened publicly, you made the comment that you would use it, you needed to save money was the reason why you let that person go.
Absolutely.
Well, the money, the salary of that person was without benefits, the gross salary was $72,092.80. So that would just about make up the request that you're making. In addition, I appreciate the comment about and I did read it, the GIS list. What I would like to see us do is get the GIS directors together and discuss how what would happen if they came together. And this was not blindsided because I came to you and said that the county was going to be cutting that, and you said that you would fund it yourself. And so that's apparently what you tried to do, and that would contribute to the deficit that you have today, because we were talking about trying to combine. We really don't need 2 GIS departments. The city joins with the county, and then we have the Register of Deeds assessor, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And I know some of the things you do are very similar to what GIS City County does, and I propose that the directors get together, and if commissioners want to attend and anybody else, that we have an open meeting and discuss duplication and the possibility of ridding some of that duplication. So, and then of course the party, which I don't have any details on, but I can only go by reports that it was an $8,000 expense. So that would be 72. Actually, it would be $80,092.80 if you took the employee who was let go and the party expense. So I'm not. I have been a long time supporter and trying to help everywhere I can to adequately fund the assessor's office. Sometimes, and Commissioner Duda has been one of the partners and others as well. But it's difficult when these things occur. And I know that you're elected independently. You can act independently, which you do. But we're responsible for paying the bills. And when we see this happening, it raises questions, and it doesn't frankly get a lot of support.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
I've got a couple of questions, and you might not have available today the answers to these, and that's fine, but I'd like to have those answered at some point. You've been here for some time, I think you said since 2005? Okay. And so as Register of Deeds, prior to the combination of the Register of Deeds and the Assessor's Office, you presided over that office for 10 years. And then when the two offices were combined, you have presided over those two offices since then. I think that one of the ideas for that combination, and I wasn't here when that happened, was that it would in some way result in savings to the county. And my question to you is, has it?
No.
The combination of those...
Can I expand on that?
Sure.
I would say no, not in realistic terms, but in decisions that are made outside of the office, for example, approval of budgets, you can self-inflict savings inappropriately, and then you end up with a situation that you need extra money. So no, it has not resulted in savings.
Okay, so this combination of the two offices went into effect in 2015, is that right? So prior to 2015, we had two budget items, a Register of Deeds budget item and a county assessor budget item. And now we have one, which totals in the area of $5 million, is that right? My question to you is, what were those numbers before, and what has happened to those numbers since? Because my understanding, not having been on the board when this board approved that consolidation, was that there were going to be savings realized as a result of that consolidation, and administrative efficiencies realized as a result of that consolidation. And I'm not going to that second one now relative to the administrative efficiencies, but I do want to know what, if any, savings have been realized or not realized, what has happened to the costs by combining these two, what I consider not to be very similar functioning administrative offices. What's actually happened? Because I think that many people were sold on the idea that by combining these two offices, that was going to result in A, some significant savings, and B, some administrative efficiencies. And so to that first question, can you today give us some idea of what it was before and what has happened since?
I can't give you the exact figures today because I don't have that in front of me, but it would be very easy to do because we have all of our records from the before and after. What I can say is that with the combining of the two offices, basically what happened is you combined the names of the office. You still have two offices, and even though geographically we're not together, we're 4 floors apart, but other than that, nothing has changed in the scope of process. The Register of Deeds still has their workflow process to do with the number of people they need to do it. The assessor side still has their process. None of those processes overlap. So you have not changed any of the efficiencies of the process because they're all time related. They all have their cyclical through the year, time deadlines. Register of Deeds is a daily time deadline. It's a revolving door. What comes in that morning has to be on record and reconciled at the end of the day. You have the assessor, who is very much yearly deadline oriented with the different process. So you have the valuation process, and that's pretty much all year round, but it concentrates in the first 3 months of the year. You have the homestead process, very time sensitive. It goes, they can start filing from January, but the crux of it, it's due June 30th. So you have right now in the spring of the year, tens of thousands of homestead applications, very time sensitive, that by statute, by deadline, has to be done June 30. You have business personal property returns. That's a self-reporting return, but still we're responsible to keep track of the numbers, the quantity, the approvals. Everything has to be entered into our system in the tens of thousands again. Those two coincide the same time of the year. The deadline to to submit your personal property is May 1st. The deadline to get all of that done is July 22nd, so you have a lot going on in a very short period of time. So you have the GIS section is a 12-month a year, and you know, to be real honest, we explored the option of renaming the department. You know, that was named GIS years and years back when they first went to the CAMA system. So it just, you know, with all their other duties and GIS being one component, is that even a valid title of the department? You know, so anyway, there's a lot of things. 4 or 5 different entities. You have the records section in the assessor has their process. About the only connection that has with the deeds office is that when the deeds are filed, the form 521 that ends up going down to Lincoln stops at the assessor's office so they can update their records for ownership. The records section does that. So you have 5 different little mini offices within the whole assessor office. None of those workflow processes changed just because the offices combined. But what you did, you eliminated the one elected official, so you have one elected official responsible for 80-some people instead of 20-some people and 6 different workflows. Okay, that's what changed. The processes, they can't change because they're individual workflow processes. So there could be no savings there in as far as the process goes. We started out with an additional manager, and one of the things that we argued about right away when we merged was that prior to the combination of the offices, the Register of Deeds had 1 chief deputy. The assessor office has 2 chief deputies. They have an office administrative one and a field one. So this board's decision back in January of 15 was to eliminate that 3rd deputy's position. Okay, that would have been a savings of 2 salaries, but rightfully so, in an office that's 4 floors apart, you have to have a manager. The field deputy manager is not an office manager, so you still have to have a manager down in the deed side, and you still have to have an office manager on the assessor side. So that created that position that I just eliminated this last beginning of the year. We did need that. It's not that we don't need it, but if you have to make any cuts, that was the most realistic budget cut to make, was that position. And now my office deputy runs back and forth just like I do. So the ability to create dollar efficiencies really can only be done when you cut proposed budgets. And then we suffer through it because we don't have the opportunity to increase resources in my appraiser staff. So we're trying to do more with less. Because if the previous administration would have been in office still, I doubt if that $500,000 would have been cut back out.
Okay, well, my question, I guess, then goes to this 80,000 request that you have is specifically for what functions?
For us getting to the end of the budget year. We have expenses that are getting us through the end of the budget year. We have payroll that gets us through the end of the budget year, and we're coming up about 80,000 short.
But if you had the original budget and you had your original staff and everything, and as Commissioner Boyle points out, it appears that you have slightly less staff now than you had when the original budget was proposed due to the departure of one of your deputies.
We have 1, right? Yes.
Okay.
And I guess what I want to say is I'm very pleased that I'm only coming to the board for 80,000 because in the realistic world, had I not been very frugal in our expenses, had I not eliminated a management level staff salary, even though it was only for half the year, had I not done that, then I would have been asking for more money. So I'm very pleased that I'm only asking for 80,000 the first time since 2005.
And, that's what I'm trying to get my head around is, okay, this 80,000 that you're asking for is going to what specifically? I mean, the document that we have says Assessor Register of Deeds due to FY 2016-17 budget cuts, $80,000.
Well, Joe told me 5 words. So otherwise, I would have been glad to give you a whole...
You have plenty of time to expand on that now.
Yeah, but I don't have the budget in front of me. I suppose Denise could come down. We have maintenance contracts that are due by June. We have salary that has to be funded till the end of June. So we have it all listed out. I mean, I could easily give you the excerpt. I didn't bring it with me today. But it's a combination of all those in
Right.
all of our different line items.
Right. And, you know, I guess those two kind of sets of numbers, the before and after of the combination numbers, you know, what it was before and what it is now relative to more, less, the same, and this specific 80,000, okay, but for what? Breakout would be helpful. And, you know, when we have that, maybe you would come
Okay.
back and we would have,
Well-
that discussion, because frankly, I'm just seeing that one line.
Yeah, excuse me, I have a little bit more detail.
Thank
It
you,
seems
Joe.
that the overage isn't coming from, you know, my sheet breaks it out into basically salaries and non-salary, and they're running slightly favorable on salaries, so the overage is coming from non-salary items. And I don't have the detail of which non-salary items, but that's where it is.
Right, and Joe, I see that, and if we're on the same page, on your daily expenditure budget comparison summary by organization, Register of Deeds, presumably that's the combined Register of
Right.
Deeds Assessors line, 504000. Salaries without fringe benefits is 4.2 million. Salary variance is minus $891. Miscellaneous is $353,000. Miscellaneous variance is minus $49,709. Total expense 4.6 million, which is 89% spent. Annual budget 5.1 million. Remaining balance 560,000.
I might be able to expand on that a little bit, Jim. Okay, I don't know how other departments work when they adjust their budgets. When we put in a proposed budget and we have all of our line items available that we plunk into Hyperion. So we have a documented amount that we perceive that we need to spend for that next budget year for line item. I know there's a lot of departments that just do a blanket, here's what I need, but we don't. We break it down for the line item. When the board decides to decrease that proposed budget, and especially to the amount of the $250,000 and $253,000 amount in the last 2 years, you have to cut it from somewhere to balance. I cannot cut it from salaries because then I would be cutting my staff. So when you have $250,000 that you have to make your budget balance for what you think you're going to need, you cut it from wherever. It's not any calculated or very detailed decision. You just have to cut somewhere $250,000 to come up with that budgeted line that the board has cut and we have to work with. That's why it appears that we have enough in salary, because I didn't cut from salary, because I could not cut staff.
Okay.
If you cut from salary, you cut staff, and I could not cut staff until the beginning of the year when I cut the one position. So we decreased each line item in various line items to equal $250,000. So when you come up to looking at, okay, you're 89% spent, you're 60% spent, you're 150% spent, that's only a pretty little picture of what you're seeing, not necessarily the actual dollars. Do you understand what I'm saying here?
I do.
So when I'm looking at for example, one of the things we are short in is postage and handling. One of the things we are short in is contract services. One of the things was the biggest one was our contractual services with our CAMA. We had to come up with a total of $253,000 to decrease my budget to balance for your approval. So that's where when I say we're short in a multitude of areas, but not necessarily one, that's what I mean by that.
And I appreciate that. I think you've probably noticed this year the Finance Committee's doing budgeting in a little different way, in that there aren't office by office, department by department public hearings on the budget requests or on supplemental requests. And so we've had people who have variances from what the finance director has put out as a guideline come before us. And, you know, we've had, I think, 3 or 4 now offices who have come before us and given us kind of, we need a different amount and here's why. and there'll be some backup information with that. And it's kind of like that I'm going to. We had, I believe, most recently the county attorney, but we've had the public defender and I think one or two
For
others.
next year's budget, right.
Yeah. And I guess my ask would be, that kind of information from you, what you're talking about, but, I'd like to see that.
Well, we're not talking about next year's budget here, respectively. We're
I
talking
appreciate
about
that.
the supplement.
And I made that distinction. This is a supplemental
Yeah.
thing. But the presentation, the information is the same. So that what we're talking about is for the backup for the supplemental ask, we would like to see, or I would anyhow, specifically where we're putting that 80,000. I'm not questioning your ability to administer what you've been elected to administer. You have a mandate, like we have a mandate from the people, to do your job. What I'm saying is we have a responsibility to make informed decisions on budget matters, and I'd like to see as much information on this budget matter as we saw from Mr. Klein or Mr. Riley or the other elected officials who came before us and said, hey, because of caseloads, because of different work things, similar to what you're outlining, we need more money.
Well, some of the reasons that we are short as well is all the overtime we spent for preliminaries. We're spending overtime, they're having to work overtime for personal property they did last year as well. We didn't have a lot of overtime last year in preliminaries as opposed to this year, but personal property both years in a row we have extra hour work with. When you have seasoned employees at time and a half, they have the choice to either take pay or comp time, but a lot of them, of course, take that pay. So the combination of all of our expenses makes up that 80,000. Now, like I said, I can supply you with all that, pretty readily, but
that'd be great. I mean, that's exactly.
I never knew. I asked what I needed to have, and it wasn't.
I understand.
As detailed.
I understand, and we don't have to do this today. So I want to give you the time to, to supply at least me, but I think the other commissioners would like to see some additional information on this before we maybe proceed on this, and that kind of strategic information relative to this was a combination that was anticipated to realize some savings, and apparently has not worked out quite that way. And it was to realize some administrative efficiencies, and I don't know whether or not it's worked out that way. But the savings part of it goes to what we're talking about here today. This is a finance question, so let's concentrate on the finance part of this. I in closing, would just like to say I kind of share Commissioner Boyle's feeling relative to the GIS as a potential area of consolidation. I mean, we have looked at this, and we met with you, Commissioner Borgerson and Commissioner Boyle and I, to discuss specifically this question, and we've all looked at the information you've provided, and I think we've all come to the same conclusion that it would realize some savings for the county if we could move ahead with the consolidation. We don't have to go into that much more today, but it's certainly something that I think that we feel might allow us to realize some of those savings that were maybe not anticipated but sought after in the original consolidation. And we honestly want to work with you on that component of county functions, because we honestly think we can maybe realize some savings. That doesn't go into this number particularly. I understand what you're saying. We need some backup information on this number, and we'd like to have you back, or at least I would, to go through that.
I can send it to you.
Right. Okay. That said, I think that maybe we lay this little component over until at least I have some more information on it I'd like to see.
I guess where I am is I'd like to move on, and my feeling is I'd like to make a motion that we decline this request, and I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Call for the question.
Well, there's some additional lights here. Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I wasn't prepared necessarily to do that, but we got to get something on the floor. What I would like to see, for example, is about three things. First is some detail of the cost of the preliminary meetings, how many taxpayers participated, and what was the total cost that was expended for that. I also really am going to, I really want joint meetings of the GIS departments, and I want the county board to participate in that and to hear what they have to say. And finally, kind of a messy detail, and that is the party. The detail, what did it cost and who paid for it. You know, I think it's, and I totally agree with Commissioner Kavanaugh on getting the detail of what the $80,000 would go for. So I would appreciate that, and laying it over is fine with me, but there is a motion on the floor that's been seconded now to decline funding. So, and I do want to say one other thing about Mr. Kavanaugh is definitely on the right track. I was opposed to the merger. I think it's failed. I don't think it's a good idea. It never did. The only thing, I could never get an answer about what the savings were. The only thing I ever saw was that one office holder's salary goes away and that's it. And that's all that's happened. I don't think it was a good idea, and frankly, I think we ought to explore asking the legislature to give us, and of course the voters approved it, which is a little complicated, but I suppose we'll go back to the voters at an election and say, you know, this didn't work, put them back where they were. That'll be a little messy, but I think it's failed, and that's put a lot of pressure on you, Ms. Badiato, and some of us, you know, I can understand it, but I still would like those details answered, and I'll put that in writing to you.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
You know, in light of that, and I think we're on the same page, Commissioner Boyle, I'd respectfully ask maybe Commissioner Morgan and Boyle to allow this to lay over until our next regularly scheduled board meeting so that we can get some of the information that's been requested back.
And I'll...
Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay, just okay, hold that thought. Are you done?
I am.
Commissioner Duda?
Thank you. No other elected official gets the level of scrutiny that you do. I find this rather amazing. Commissioners that didn't like an action of this board years ago that was then ratified by a vote of the people, but they're still angry over it. I never said it would save anything more than the salary of one elected official, and now we look at it, and it has saved the salary of one elected official. If we want to tell the people that they were wrong in merging these offices, go for it. Put it back on the ballot. See how well this floats with the vote of the people. With what, like 70% said, yes, let's merge these offices. I also have a feeling at the end of the day, we're going to say no to you. There's 5 weeks left in the fiscal year. You need this money to complete the year. We want to wait 2 weeks before we tell you no. And then you figure out how to make your budget work in those last 3 weeks when you don't have the money to pay for it. You're a very popular target, but this isn't just you. Don't take this too personally, because we treated the last assessor with the same level of disrespect. You are a popular target. Why any sane person runs for that office, I will never understand. I appreciate that you did. But it's a very popular target, always has been. I think that we keep your office chronically underfunded, and then we go around having town hall meetings to beat up on you. Say what a lousy job you're doing, but we're the county board, we're here to save the taxpayers. I'm sorry for the treatment and the disrespect that you get, but now we're going to lay this over for 2 weeks before we tell you no, you don't get the money, because you won't jump through all the hoops the way we want you to jump through. And we're holding you responsible for a decision that you didn't even support. I mean, you were not for the merger.
Right.
You were vocally, publicly opposed to it. We put it on the ballot anyway, and now we're saying, why haven't you made this a better success? Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan?
Okay. First, I want to make sure I respond to Commissioner Kavanaugh. Usually, I like to do the layovers, and still considering that, but there's a part of me that Commissioner Duda made a good point that then it leaves 3 weeks and puts us in a more difficult spot. So I'm not sure I want to delay it the 2 weeks because we don't meet next week. The second thing is if I've ever been disrespectful to Mrs. Badiato, I'd like to have someone bring that up. What I've tried to do is stay on facts of inconsistencies and what the exact cases were, where you have a home last week, the guy called me, listed at $1.2 million and it's valued at $600,000. You have a home that was bought 10 years ago and the guy spent $500,000 and it's valued, he's got over $1.6 million in it, and it's now valued at $600,000. Another one that was built for over $3 million is valued at under $1 million in the last 5 years. Paid $400,000 or $500,000 just for the lot and tore down a house. So I have some difficulties, and those are the facts. It's not any one person's fault. The other thing that you mentioned, Commissioner Duda, with all respect, you mentioned town hall meetings to criticize. I made sure, and Dan Ish was there, that when anyone brought up something concerning the assessor's office last Wednesday night with 200 people there, that we didn't go there. That meeting was about one thing: how to protest your taxes and the items you should bring. And I stand to be corrected by Dan Ish or Kathleen, who did an outstanding job with Dan helping me at that meeting. That's all it was about. And as you know, when some lady said something, I cut it off immediately right there. So I know you have a difficult job, and I said that right at the outset of the meeting. That was my first statement, that being the assessor is difficult. As far as I'm concerned, you know, I'll leave it to Commissioner Boyle if he wants to lay it over for the 2 weeks. But I, for one, think with what's gone on and what I've seen, you know, I just am not in favor of giving this $80,000. And we've seen what the state has done and what others have done, and I think we ought to take the appropriate action and demonstrate we don't want to have these budget increases over the budget. You have to make those cuts and manage that office.
I'd like to make a comment, if I could.
The last statement I want to make
we're done.
on the combining of the offices, and I'm going to be blunt, I'm not here to try to sugarcoat things. In my opinion, and I've said it for at least 3 years, the assessor's office should be appointed so this board is responsible, and I've said it to state senators and others. That's my feeling about the assessor, because it is such an important job, and I want this board to be responsible, that the buck stops here if we have the kinds of things taking place. So that's where I stand, and I'm just trying to be very transparent. Okay, no more from me.
Okay, I'd just like to make a quick comment about the town hall meetings. It's quite confusing to those of us up on 4th floor. We've had many years of very heavily contested property protests. I know one year when I went back in the records, we had like 10,000, 12,000. So this is not the first year that we have potentially started out the year with a lot of property protests. What really confuses and puzzles me is that after 4 weeks of hell on this podium, that we succumbed to your suggestions to lower the median range. And we succumbed to the suggestion of a 93%, which we knew was very, very low on the range of value. So we complied, not necessarily approvingly, but we complied with this board's mandate, if you will, to go down to 93% median. Now, with that happening, it puzzles us to see why we're having an influx of town hall meetings to talk to the public about the protest process, because in actuality, since we succumbed to your 93%, everybody should be happy, and there should be relatively few protests. Instead of you incorporating the town hall meetings to tell them how to protest, which is all on the website, it has been for years. I don't know if it's ever been done to this extent before. It doesn't really make sense to me, and I don't know. So I'm just saying that's the information, that's the vibes we're getting upstairs, not just from me, not just from my management, but every one of the appraisal staff that's worked so hard for going on 6 months in the light of this huge issue. So I guess I just have to make that comment, that it puzzles me that after succumbing to the 93%, that we're going through this.
Commissioner Boyle.
Well, your office is not alone in scrutiny. We've certainly gone toe-to-toe with the Sheriff's Office and the Crime Lab, and I've raised hell with them over the years. I've finally given up because it can't happen. But, you know, I really, if you were, it was a public meeting, but it was in 903, but, you know, really tried to get the business plan out of them and get some, you know, some figures, and the income doesn't come near what the expenditure is. We're over $1 million in payroll expenses, and the income at the time was $28,000. I don't know what it is now. I guess I feel like it's out of control. It's something that I can't do anything about. So I'm trying to bury the hatchet with the sheriff and say, okay, listen, you've got a statutory right to run it, so go ahead and do it. So you're not alone. But let me mention that probably one of the, and this goes back to your predecessor, getting information out of your office has been impossible. I get calls from people in my district who say, you know, my home, which is 1,200 square feet, I have 2 bedrooms and a little dining area, and I have a detached garage, and my neighbor's taxes, valuation rather, is substantially lower than mine. How come? Well, I would call the assessor's office and say, what is the model? What is the model for a 1,200 square foot home with a detached garage? What should they be paying per square foot? And I have never, let me say it again, never been able to get a model. So I can't answer my constituents. So then that triggers town halls where people want to come in and talk about things. They are taxpayers. Those are the people that we are responsible to, not you. And so we don't want to hurt your feelings, and we're not trying to, and I haven't had one, but I've got a map of the district, and I do have some areas where there's substantial increases in South Omaha, and I intend to look at them very carefully. But the reason that we are still questioning this, and I even had an anonymous contact from a staff member in your office who said, quit picking on us. You know, we're working very hard. I know you're working very hard, but how do you account for these wide swings in the property values, the incredible increases in land, and then some homes are even lowered? And I don't mean to get anecdotal, but I'll pull one out of my head. I got someone sent me anonymously a home out in western Douglas County that was purchased for $610,000 in March of 2017, 2016, I don't remember. But the valuation of the house, the bottom line, taking into the land and the improvement, is $420,000. Now, how does that drop? That was from a neighbor saying, what the hell's going on? And then you look at some areas where that's, you know, the land has gone up dramatically and houses, the improvements are being reduced. And you know, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And a lot of the land is, in many of the cases that I looked at, were not level lots. They were leading down to creeks. I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And so, and we can't get any answers. That's why I think, and I haven't had a neighborhood meeting. I contacted all the neighborhood associations and said, if you want to meet, here's how you file a protest. If you want to meet, let me know. I'll be available. We'll get it put together. I've heard back from them saying, thank you for the offer. We don't see that happening. And it's not in South Omaha. And I think that's probably the next target, if I could use that word. But it is really the wild swings. Someone asked me, why aren't you happy with this 90-some% valuation? And I said, because it's kind of like going to a restaurant and you eat there 50 times. And 7 times you get food poisoning, and the rest of them you get fabulous meals. And so you give a percentage, oh, it's 93% acceptable. Yeah, but you got poisoned 3 times. The taxpayers are getting poisoned. And many of them are in a poison stage right now, and so they're not happy with 93%. They're at, in many cases, well over 100%, 125, 130, 150% increases. And there's a man that I've talked to many times who lives out west, whose home was valued at $400,000, the whole thing, the package. I always talk in those terms, but the land and the improvement at $400,000, it is now valued close to $800,000, and that's where he sits. So it might be nice that you got this 93%, but it's only good, and there's a lot of silence from people who've had reductions. They want it, they think it's great. The bottom line is that they're going to be paying less taxes, and I don't know, I just think the system is incredible. We've never got an answer about how in the world did these land values go soaring through the roof, and in many cases, wonderful homes that are valued at $400,000 and $500,000 dropping to $300,000, and the bottom line is that the levy, or excuse me, the taxes paid will be substantially less. So we're puzzled. We're not taking after you, but we have not gotten answers. And we're not trying to run a popularity contest, and I'd like to reiterate that this is our responsibility. And I was opposed to the merger. All I ever saw in SEMA savings was the salary of one elected official. I was opposed to it. I don't think it's worked. And Diane, you know that I have praised you repeatedly before this for your work as the Register of Deeds. I mean, but something has happened when we can't get answers. So that's where I'm frustrated by it. And so I'm not going to withdraw my second to deny the funding. And the interesting thing is that if we get good answers from you about the detail of the cost of the preliminary meetings, about how many people attended, what the cost was, what the real cost of those preliminary meetings, what it was, if we're able to have a joint meeting of GIS departments before the county board, and if we get detail about that party, I'll be on the prevailing side and I can call for reconsideration, which I promise you I will if we get answers.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Okay, I'd like to focus this back on what we're here to talk about. I mean, I think we've kind of gone a little far afield, but the idea that we have some information to back up this number is one that I'm coming back to, because that's what I would like to do to make an informed decision on this. My general principle is you were elected to do a job. You answer to the voters. You have a mandate like we have a mandate. And if you need resources to do that job, I'm inclined to give you the resources that you need. We'd like to work with you on the GIS thing, but this is a different kettle of fish. So I would like to make a motion just to lay this over until we get the information that I requested, which is narrowly focused on the $80,000 that you're requesting. If we got more information on how it was before the offices were combined and now, that's fine. But the $80,000 that we're requesting is what I'm making the motion to lay over for, and we can have the other discussion at another time on these other matters.
Could you make that for 2 weeks so it's a date definite? If you do, I'll second the motion.
Okay, I would.
There's a motion on the floor already.
But doesn't a motion to lay over take priority?
It does?
I think it does.
Okay. So there was a motion and a second
In my mind, still.
to lay over. Yes, I saw two lights. Commissioner Morgan?
Well, the only thing is, now you're getting up to that 3 weeks before the budget, which doesn't give time to do it. And I think, what figures you see are going to be interesting figures. One statement that was made that she was mandated or succumbed to this board's request. What we requested was a 3.5% increase and let the people come down on that. That's what we requested more than once, twice, probably 6 or 8 times, and I even said, I'm begging to do that. That's not what happened. I've seen reductions and had the people call as other commissioners where they're telling me, my home's undervalued by, you won't say anything, will you, but it's undervalued by $200,000. I'm not going to tell you where I live, and so on. And we've seen that, and I think you're shaking your head. Yes, Commissioner Kavanaugh, you've heard it, and that's where the difficulty is. So I don't want to say you succumb to our mandate. We said we wanted that 3, and then I compromise at 3.5% increases. And then when I see land that somebody paid in 15, valued at, paid $2.7 million, tore down the buildings, and now it's valued finally at $1.7 million, and I see other properties that are way over valued, the land, it doesn't even make sense. So I still would like to see us, I think if you supersede, so if it is the 2 weeks and the majority rules, I'm okay with that. But I'd like to see us just move on and pass what Commissioner Boyle seconded and I made the motion of.
Well, could I address, I really need to address what you're saying.
Wait a
because,
minute, Diane.
Oh,
I'll call when the lights are done.
Oh, I
Commissioner
thought they were
Duda?
done, sorry.
Thank you. At this point, I think laying over for 2 weeks might be the best approach. I don't. There's a couple of leaps in logic here that I'm trying to understand. We point out examples of houses that have peculiar, or properties that have peculiar anomalies or whatever figures, and use those to justify that we want to cut your budget. And there's a leap in logic there that says, if you have less staff and have to make all these drastic cutbacks, that'll show you. You know, how does that produce a better, more accurate figure for the property taxpayer? I don't understand that leap in logic.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
And I want to keep focused on this. All we're talking about is the 80,000 here. I understand and I appreciate Commissioner Morgan's expertise in this area. It's a valuable, valuable contribution to the board's deliberation on property tax valuations. And I've learned a lot from this man about that. I'm just talking about the 80,000 here and with all due respect, a little bit of time for me to get a little bit of information. I don't think will change anything in the greater scheme of things, and maybe won't even change the outcome here. But I'd appreciate the deference on this one little thing, on the 80,000. The other discussion, I think, is a much wider discussion, and it's probably not appropriate for today. I share a lot of the sentiments that have been expressed here, but I'd just like to narrow this down to the 80,000.
I got to say one thing. I didn't know you were such a good salesman.
Commissioner Boyle?
Well, Commissioner Kavanaugh, this has drifted because of the comments that have come up and trying to get to the matter of what has really triggered this request for an increase. And those questions that I asked hopefully can get to the bottom of it. So that's why this is somewhat drifted, but that really isn't a drift. The other thing, Commissioner Duda, no one is trying to, you missed the point here. The reason I brought up this valuation chaos is that we have not been able to get answers, and we were talking to you. You said we're picking on her. We're not picking on her. That's the problem is we have not gotten good information to answer to taxpayers about why this has happened. And so that's not related to, and I'm penalizing her because we didn't get this information, but you talked about us picking on her, and we're not. This is a result of not having information. If we had the information, I'm almost certain this would not be happening today. It's frustrating because it's turned into a really adversarial situation. We need the information, and we're not getting it.
Commissioner Morgan?
Commissioner Kavanaugh, I'm going to go ahead and I know Mike may not appreciate this, but I think out of respect, go with the 2 weeks.
Thank you.
And let that go. But I do have reservations.
Commissioner Duda?
Thank you. One last point. We really do need to move on, but we've got it in our minds that there's a simple formula out there that says the value of a house equals X plus Y, and why won't you share that with us? We're just, you got a lot of people with a lot of expertise at valuing properties, and I don't think there really is such a formula that says the value of a house equals X plus Y, but we believe that there ought to be. And we keep wanting you to share with us this formula. Why is this house off? What's your formula? I don't think there is a simple set formula that they are hiding from us, that they use. I think it's far more complicated than that, and we're trying to oversimplify things. And I think we should give up on trying to pry out of you what the secret sauce formula is for how you come up with evaluations.
Commissioner Boyle?
Well, I would only say that, as you said, we don't know. And I don't believe that the county assessor starts from scratch every time they value a home. I think they start from something. What is that something? And if there is nothing, then just say so. No, we go out and every home we look at, we start from scratch. We go down the block and we say, this house has got aluminum siding, this one is brick, this one is a ranch, this is 2-story, so this will be this value and this will be that value. How can that be consistent? It can't be. There has to be a formula. And if we knew it, it would be extremely helpful. And frankly, if our referees knew it, it'd be helpful. And if there is no formula and you do this by scratch, every time you start off brand new on every piece of property, tell us.
Diane?
Okay, now if I can remember everything I was going to comment on, is that first of all, at the end of the 4th presentation at the beginning of the year, we brought many ideas to this board. The idea that you all agreed upon was the 93%. We talked about the 3, we talked about the 3.5, we talked about 92, we talked about 96, we talked about a lot of things. Every time you requested information on any one of those ideas, we brought you charts and showed you where we would end up. The last consensus was 93%. When you do 93%, you are going to have a lot of fluctuation in valuations, because what you're doing when you decide that you're going to do a percent medium across the board, you have just eliminated equalization, because every area was either increased or decreased. In this situation, everybody was decreased to meet 93%. You're going to have properties that were initially at 95 or 96 or whatever they were, that were lowered to 93% because of this unified decision. That's where you get the 400,000, the 800,000 that's now 600,000. It's not going to be accurate because there is no equalization in that window anymore. You have done an across-the-board 93%. Now, okay, can I finish? Okay. So that answers that, where we arrived at 93%. Number 2, we are not here today to talk and argue about valuations. We've been down that road many, many times. If you saw the scope of work that we talked about, we put on the website, you guys, we sent it to you. We did 4 presentations, and in every single one, we walked through the process of how a sale starts and how a valuation is structured. I will, in very quick details, say that one more time. We do not pull numbers out of the air. A sale is recorded in the Register of Deeds office. The Form 521 that ultimately ends up with the state of Nebraska Department of Revenue gets pulled by the assessor's office. The sale is validated to make sure it's an arm's length transaction. If it is, it goes into the pot of valuing the area of which that sale's in. We take into consideration square footage, quality of construction, condition of the property externally and internally, if we have that information. The sales in those areas are compared together in mass. And through that process, you come up with a valuation of the area. No 2 houses are probably ever going to be the same, because every single house is a little bit different. Now, I'm not saying that's 100%, because there might be properties that are exactly the same. But that is, in a nutshell, the very simplistic process. Every 6 years, we have a mandate that we have to update that process and try to find the best information we can. Okay, that's all. We're not even here today to talk about that, but there again, here we are. I want to reiterate a little bit on some of the details, Jim, that you asked about the expenditures to total the $80,000. We were prepared that we had all that information together. In talking with Joe, I asked what I needed, and he said, just give me the amount. We want a five-word synopsis of why you need it, and that doesn't give me a whole lot to go on. So Denise has just brought me down 58 to 60,000 that we need between now and the end of the budget year is going for the envelopes, the postage, the paper, the printing of the valuation change notices we have to send this year that normally we do not send this many. So that's the bulk of that 80,000. The other is we've had some increases in service contracts, which takes up the rest. The bulk of that is the postage and the overtime we've had to spend. So if we have $60,000 in the postage and preparation to send the valuation change notices, you can probably rest assured that another 15 or 20 was due to the overtime for preliminaries. Now, if you want any more detail on that, I'd be glad to give it to you, but pretty much 60,000 is the bulk of what we're looking for.
Commissioner Boyle?
I'll tell you, I'm trying to look up, and I did come across some, but I'm still, I still don't understand. I guess the question I'd like to ask you and see if you can tell me. When and why and by whom was the decision made to raise the value of land?
Land had not been reappraised or readjusted sometimes as far back as 1997. Land changes in value, whether it's residential, ag, commercial, whatever. Land changes. And with those changes, you have to do revaluations. Again, we're not here to talk about this today. I'm not prepared. I don't think it's fair to be able to talk about something that I was here to talk about $80,000 supplemental budget. I'm not here to talk again and again and again about what we've gone over for 6 months. It does not make sense. I'd be more than happy to discuss it one more time, but not in this venue because this is not what's on the agenda.
Please don't treat us as children.
Well,
you have excuse me. You have never answered the question, and once again, you did not.
Answered it.
So, you have brought this on yourself.
Okay.
Well, you have, and when this sort of thing happens, people are going to lose their homes over what you did. You may think this is in the abstract, but there are
How can they lose their homes when we went down to 93%?
Well, it's 93% across the county, but like I said, there is a taxpayer whose home was valued at, the whole improvement and the home was valued at $420,000 or whatever it was, and now it's over $800,000. He's a retired man. He's 70 years old. And he told me last week, again, he called me and said, I'm going to have to sell my house. And he said, I don't know if I can sell it with the taxes as they will be. I mean, and with the valuation as it is. But it is hurting people, because, and somehow we have to get to the bottom of this. How in the world, I know that the land hasn't gone up over a period of years, but how in the world are people going to be expected to pay the taxes based on the valuation of their land going from $24,000 to $98,000 for some homes, simple homes, and others that are going from $100 and some thousand to $400,000. I mean, it can't happen. I mean, and that the 93% is kind of like you got a classroom full of kids, and 3 or 4 of them are flunking every course, and the rest of them have all got A's. Well, you're going to have a 93% average. That's not what this is about. We have to have everybody at 93%. And I don't know how you do it, but you don't do it the way you're doing it. And again, we don't have an answer about how in the world did you come up with these astronomical land values. And then some of the homes are lowered in valuation. I mean, it's baffling.
Commissioner Morgan?
Apologize, you mentioned the land, and Mike mentioned the land, and you mentioned the 93%. It's hard for us. And Commissioner Kavanaugh's district has it big time, where land values have changed over on residential property, Commissioner Kavanaugh, over $100,000 down, from $200,000 for my lot to $100,000. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but we're not here for that. What we are here for is the fact, and maybe repeat it, because maybe there's a way to just end it today, and that would be nice for everyone. is she gave us some numbers, and I know they're not in writing, but
I have
maybe
it
it'd be
right.
good to repeat it, and we could take the action today, because I'm more than prepared to vote on this supplemental budget, and all I'm saying is, I want a message to go out. As far as supplemental budgets, it better be totally justified. And yeah, that's the part. And I think there needs to be a greater respect, Diane Badiato, for this board and what we're trying to do. And you can balk at that, but let me just tell
I think it has to be a
you,
two-way street.
I wasn't going to say it, but I heard you say on TV you were paying for that party out of funds, and then I saw where that wasn't stated.
I'm sorry, I don't
Mike
understand.
McKnight's story on Channel 6, where the office was closed for 4 hours.
Yes.
And you said it's being paid for out of campaign funds.
I never
and the
said.
people were taking a
excuse
leave.
me. Excuse me.
Just a second.
No,
Diane,
I will.
wait
I'm
until
sorry.
you're called
Okay,
on
go ahead.
to
Let her
answer.
go ahead.
No, that's one thing you will never hear from me. Nothing was ever said about anything commingling any campaign funds, and I resent that on public record and will rebut that. That is horrible. I have never said anything about campaign funds. I said that party was not paid for. The only county dollars that paid that party was the salary that I let my people off of work. That's the only thing. Everything else was paid for personally by my managers and my staff entirely. And nothing was ever said about any campaign dollars ever.
So the 8,000 came out of
The
budget.
8,000 was the total of the salaries if the people would have been working.
And wasn't it stated that there was going to come out of taking leave of absence? Vacation?
No, initially, and then we decided against that. It was, yes.
Okay.
But there, so please,
I apologize
Thank
if
you.
that was in error.
thank you.
Commissioner Boyle.
Well, I pulled up a house here that I want to talk to you about.
Well, Mike,
But
can
I'll
we?
take- This is the problem.
I know, but let's
Okay.
stick to the $80,000.
Go ahead with, repeat those numbers again
Okay.
for everyone of what
Okay.
that supplement is.
We can get you the invoices if you need them, if you don't trust my word. $58,000 to $60,000 that is going to be due to Unionist Printing, a chargeback to .com for printing the mailers, for envelopes, to do the property change notices. I thank you, Denise, for bringing that down to corroborate my story. The excess is the overtime that had to be expended for the staff to do the 4,700 preliminary meetings. Now, I just gave you that answer too. 4,700 preliminary meetings. That's where we came to the 80,000 that Joe put in. Thank you, Joe, for my supplemental budget.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Okay. Well, relative to the 80,000, I mean, I have no reason not to take those numbers as given. It seems that those additional costs were incurred doing what was necessary to notify people of their property tax valuation changes, mailing those notices out. So if that's the entirety of the 80,000, I agree with Commissioner Morgan. You've answered the question. I can proceed without a document at this point. I wanted to give you every opportunity to take time.
Well, I apologize for not having that up front, but I didn't. I was told it wasn't needed.
Believe me, I understand. So if that's what you want to do today, we can proceed.
I'm gonna.
Commissioner Morgan?
I thank you for coming here today and answering and talking about this important issue. I'm going to make the motion to deny the 80,000, being as we got the numbers.
I think that's already, that motion's on the floor, but then there was
It
a
is.
motion to lay over. Is that,
I will take a vote on the layover motion. I still think it would be best to have everybody here, but I mean, let's vote on that, and then we can proceed from there.
So we're voting, Commissioner Boyle,
layover.
on the layover.
and, I too, I've been quiet through all of this, on the 80,000, and I guess, just so you know ahead of the vote that I'm not in favor of voting for the 80,000 either, and what I would ask that you do in the interim, similar to what Commissioner Boyle said afterwards, is that I would like to see in your budget what you would do if you don't get the 80,000, what you would have to do.
You want us to talk about
And so I don't think there's the necessity to lay it over either.
Okay, I'd like Denise to talk with that, because what happens to be able to meet this is going to affect our budget for next year, and we'll be right back in the same boat.
Denise Lickeye, Assistant Deputy Assessor Register of Deeds. If the is not funded, it will have to hold off service contracts. We've never been late on service contracts before, so there possibly could be penalty fees. I don't know how that would. We've never been late on those, so I don't know. But that's our only option on that. Everything else is black and white. I mean, you can look at my detailed versus org. The categories that are short are the service contracts, and we are going to be short in the postage, and we have no control over that.
Okay. Commissioner Boyle?
Well, unless I get stopped, there's a home that I've pulled up that last year the land was $382,500. The home was $382,500 for the land. The home was $3,250,000, and the total valuation was $3,600,000 plus. This year, the land has dropped from $382,000 to $328,000. The improvement has dropped from $3,200,000 to $260,000. $2,600,000. So the total valuation is dropping from $3.6 million to $2.9 million, and so the homeowner is realizing a $636,400 reduction.
Okay.
Now, what is that? I mean, if you want to find money to pay for your contracts and your computer stuff, why isn't this valued properly? This is a screw up.
Okay.
This can't be right. So I have no sympathy for you. You've botched the whole thing terribly.
Okay. Let's, again, there's a motion on the floor to lay over this item for 2 weeks. Please vote.
Motion fails.
Okay, I'll make my original motion to deny this request for supplemental budget of $80,000.
And I seconded it.
Any further, Commissioner Duda?
Well, the handwriting's on the wall. I can see what's going to happen. We continue to vilify you. I don't understand why we don't at least pay the postage of these extra mailings that you have to send out, but guess we're not going to. Sorry.
No further questions or comments. Please vote.
One moment, please.
And what is the question?
The motion is denying the 80,000.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah,
Let me ask a question. Could we change this and reduce it to $58,000 as a supplemental budget, the cost of those postage deals?
Yeah.
Is that okay? What I'd like to do, I think it's a nice compromise, and I learned that from Terry Carpenter. He said the art of politics is compromise. Why don't we go ahead, a supplemental budget of $58,000, and I'd change that motion to give her a supplemental of $58,000. What is the exact amount, Commissioner Kavanaugh? 58.
Do you have the exact?
5860. What was that amount, Denise?
Well, it was 58 to 60,000. We don't have the final bill yet.
Okay, we'll go with 60,000
All right.
as a supplemental budget.
All right, so you're withdrawing the current motion to deny, and now you're placing a motion on the floor for a supplemental of 60,000.
Correct.
And there's a second. Okay.
Okay.
Please vote.
Motion passes.
Okay. The next one
Was that
is
unanimous?
district
It's
court.
not.
It
But
wasn't?
passed. Well, it'll be Commissioner Boyle's.
Okay.
The next one is district court.
Me.
And Joe,
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
the district court is asking for $50,000 increase, and their basis is
It was
increase
increased
in caseload.
increased caseload, and particularly a couple of those high-profile trials required additional expenses for getting the jury, and just the whole procedural issues were magnified because of those the kind of trials that they were.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
I think we're all aware, based on the briefings that we received from the county attorney and the public defenders over the last few weeks, that there's significant uptick in caseloads, particularly on the criminal docket, and that alone would result in this type of a request. So I move that we approve this.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Kavanaugh, second by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote.
Motion passes.
The State Institutions Fund, that was, which I don't have that one written.
Yeah, that one was an increase in, state institutions works when the judges in a court request that the person on trial be sent to, I think it's Beatrice or Lincoln, to the state facilities to do a psychiatric examination. And so that's kind of out of our control, but there was a definite uptick in those this year too, and we have to reimburse the state for the cost involved with that to those institutions. So that's what that $164,000 represents.
All right, is Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Joe, is there a discrete and separate state institutions fund in our budget?
Yes, it's a separate fund. It's state institutions. So
And is that funded with general fund dollars?
it's funded with property tax dollars, yes.
And this is a request for, what was the dollar amount again that you mentioned?
$164,000.
Which was not budgeted, is that right?
Well, some money was budgeted, but this is in excess of that budget.
Okay. So is it a typo on the agenda where it says 614,000 instead of 164,000?
That's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing?
Yeah, it's the whole. If you look at the last paragraph, it'll say 164,000 for the state institutions fund.
Okay. So this would be basically 164,000 out of the general fund?
Out of, no, it would come, yeah, I guess in that, from total reserves, right? It would be funded out of reserves.
Okay. All right. And that's because of increased caseload of people that we've had examined or treated?
Right, and like I said, it's really not discretionary on our part. Those psychiatric examinations are ordered by the judges.
Those are a result of the criminal justice system, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle?
I want to ask if any of these, the subjects of these examinations are paid for by Medicaid, or is that just non-existent, it's paid by us?
It's paid by us. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it ever being any Medicaid money going towards these.
Do we ever ask if they're Medicaid eligible, or if they're covered by Medicaid?
Commissioners, inmates would not be eligible for Medicaid while they're in custody, so Medicaid would not be.
Okay, are these all inmates?
They're all prisoners in custody who are being sent by the court for evaluation prior to trial.
Okay, thank you.
With that, do we have a motion on the state institutions fund?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further questions? Please vote.
Motion passes.
And the employee fringe benefits?
As I said before, this is when we put into our budget, reflects the county portion of employee health premiums, and so we always, estimate the premiums about this time of year, but they're not actually set and go into effect until January 1st, and the actual amount of the premiums was higher by about 1%, so this reflects the additional funding needed for those increased premiums.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Joe, you say this is a 1% increase in our health
Well, no,
insurance?
1% incremental. I think when we did the budget, we were going to fund it at 4 to 5%, and the actual amount of the increase was 5 to 6%.
And why is that?
Based on history. This is what we have the consultants look at and the actuaries, and they project it. And the just our history of our workforce is the claims were higher than originally expected.
Okay, we changed healthcare providers first of the year, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a 1% increase in our premiums under the new healthcare provider, Blue Cross, right?
Yeah, but this was going to go into this premium increase was going to go into effect no matter who we had as our healthcare provider. This was determined from Aon, and it wasn't really dependent on who we were using, United Healthcare or Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yeah. Actually, if you recall, Aon gave us some inaccurate numbers during that discussion, and so I would like to see from Aon the dated document that says we're going to get a 1% healthcare premium increase regardless of who our healthcare carrier was. I'd like to see that document before I can vote for this 1% premium increase to our healthcare premiums.
Commissioner Boyle?
Well, thank you. I'd point out, I believe that, remembering that we are the actual payer of all claims, Douglas County taxpayers, and so whoever administers it, if we had the skills, we could do it ourselves and not pay the fees that are probably in the millions, and I've got them cut one time. But, the administrator of the plan, if it was, ABC insurance consultants, or whether it's Blue Cross Blue Shield, or whether it's United Healthcare, I don't think matters. I think it goes to what we're doing, not what they're doing.
Is there a motion? Was there a motion on the floor? Is there a motion?
I'm sorry, there was. I apologize, Madam Chair, there was.
All right. Please vote.
Motion passes.
We'll move to committees, the first being the budget document as presented. And we do have one presentation, and that is by the 911 Communications Department. Yep, come on up. And Joe, do you want to just give us the background of
Yes.
why they're here?
Dave is going to come in and talk about their request is about $200,000 over the target, and Dave's going to run through the rationale why that is. And the only other thing I would remind the commissioners of is that their budget is 85% reimbursed by the city of Omaha, and Dave and I met with the representatives from the city of Omaha, and they have basically signed off on this request for the higher amount.
So our end result for county is what? 30,000? Okay.
Okay, I'll bring the PowerPoint up here. Dave Sleeter, Douglas County Emergency Communications Center. Good morning.
Morning.
Okay. Okay, thank you for giving me an opportunity to present this to you, my first ever budget meeting with you all. After this morning, I don't know how to proceed here, but I'll just present what I have, and I'm sure glad I'm not asking for a supplement. So, okay, the Emergency Communications Center funding responsibilities for operational costs, of course, are 85% City of Omaha responsibility and 15% Douglas County. I think you're probably well aware of that. The first thing I want to talk about is our near future budget requests. These are the things we're expecting in the next budget year. One of the things we're asking for here is another fire dispatcher on each shift. It takes roughly 6 staff members needed to staff one additional 24/7 fire dispatcher position, and the salary is listed there, $274,060. That's salary only. And first question is, why would we want to do this? It would be required for full optimization of the Omaha Fire Department Fire Station alerting system. In other words, with the new alerting system, we're anticipating there may be some additional responsibilities on the part of the fire dispatcher in addition to what they're doing now. All that is determinant of what type of fire station alerting system the fire station or the fire department elects to go with. There's various options they can get with the fire station alerting system, and each one of those options requires a different amount of involvement on our part. It could be as simple as just a queue that comes up that we fill in a location, or there can be some more requirements on part of the fire dispatchers. It's required to facilitate future Omaha Fire Department advanced tactical radio communications. The fire department has plans in the near future to require a different dispatching methodology, which would require the communication center to manage moving them to tactical channels differently than what we are doing now. That could involve and would involve a more involvement on part of a fire dispatcher. And one of the big reasons here is that our communications center supervisor now is required to continuously monitor and assist with fire dispatching activities and is not available to efficiently supervise 12 to 15 communications center staff. Anytime that fire department activities increase to any level at all, our communications supervisor must jump in and act as a fire dispatcher. When that happens, we of course, they're no longer supervising. And there are 12 to 15 people on duty at a time that they're responsible to supervise. That includes the people that are taking all the calls that come in the center and all the dispatching that's going on. That's very hard to do when you're a fire dispatcher involved in dispatching a fire activity. So with the addition of a fire dispatcher, that would enable a supervisor to be a true supervisor. And going on with that, so that's our fire dispatcher. But I can tell you those positions are not going to be included in the numbers you see here in the totals. That is not included in that. This is a budget request that I've made, and I've told that the city may not want to fund this. Okay? But I'm including it because as the director here, I can tell you there's a need. There's a real need for our supervisors to be supervisors. You've got 12 or 15 people working out there, and they're tied up either as a fire dispatcher, or at times they're a call taker, or you'll see here later in the slide, they're giving breaks. That's a lot of times we don't have the people to give breaks. And when I got here, it was roughly half the time people were not getting breaks. And the center was paying time and a half for people not to get breaks, but more importantly is people need breaks. You can't sit in there for 8, or some if you're on overtime, 12 hours and not get a break. And that's very important. So by the time our supervisors now give everybody a break, 12 to 15 people, and then fill in as fire dispatchers, they're unable to be true supervisors. And when you consider the number of calls that are coming in, over 60,000 911 calls a month, not total phone calls, the average is 60,000 911 calls a month. Somebody needs to supervise that activity, because some of these calls are wireless 911s, and there's questions about locations and things that are very high profile and very high liability situations that a supervisor is not available to help them. Technical support position, it's a $60,000 salary only. This would be a lower level technician to be deployed full time at the new communication center at the Fitz building. And I have a slide coming up here to explain why the need is there a little bit more, but it would be available, they'd be available to immediately daytime technical problems resolution for radio, telephone, computers, aided dispatch issues at the Fitz. I'll go to a little bit more in a minute here. And assistance with continuous inventory, organizational logistics at the existing 911 center and Fitz building. They would do preventative maintenance on all technical equipment at the Fitz building. Right now, there are technicians available all during the day and into the early afternoon to assist dispatchers and operators if their telephone systems don't work, if their computer-aided dispatch system doesn't work, a mouse dies, their keyboard goes dead, or the computer-aided dispatch system just goes away. And that's the key to what really makes our system work. When we go to the Fitz building, there will not be a technician there, because the technicians that we have currently will remain with all the infrastructure equipment is going to remain at the Douglas County Communications Center as it is now. None of that main infrastructure is going to the Fitz building. The cost would have been tremendous to move all that, plus the facility was already there that could house that. So when we move everyone over to the Fitz building, there will be no technicians available to help when our computer-aided dispatch system goes down, telephone system goes down, just the day-to-day things that go when you have 16 people pounding on computers. So this technical support position would support that. They would assist with the radio upgrade of the public safety bond. There's a lot of that legwork has to be done going to radio towers, installing equipment, things like that. They would assist with radio communication with the IP Internet Protocol backhaul system under direction of the technical manager. This technician would be under the direction of the technical manager. And proactive system support for public safety. It happens all the time. Public safety agencies are calling up and saying, hey, our mobile data system's not working with the computer-aided dispatch system. Can you help us? Can you go check it? And what they'll do is they'll resolve it with our infrastructure to take care of that. Prepare for a move to the Fitz building. That's why we'd like to have them before we actually move, because the actual deployment or the moving is going to be a huge logistical issue for us, because setting up all the new equipment at the new center while you're maintaining the old, getting everything to work in place so that there's a seamless transition, to do the things like phone and network reworking, setting up equipment. And here's my note on that. The main emergency communications center infrastructure equipment for our computer-aided dispatch, radio, and telephony all will remain at the Douglas County Emergency Communications Center where it is now. Current technical staff will need to remain on site at the Sheriff's Department facilities to service existing infrastructure. And this is possible because of the virtualization of our systems. We don't have to have all this big infrastructure sitting right in the same building at the Fitz building as where it is now. It can be all virtualized. In other words, it's done through Internet Protocol, and it's been in place for a number of years now and works very well, reduces our cost, and very highly efficient. Okay, we're looking for an administrative assistant. Actually, the deputy director's position was the administrative assistant and was actually restructured, made into a deputy director. So this would be a new position, administrative assistant. It would be a administrative type person to assist for administrative projects and reports, policy and procedures, upgrade, continue to develop records management, payroll completion. To show you the need for this, and I don't want to embarrass it, but our deputy director comes in on Sundays to do payroll because she does not have time to get it done during the week. And this is a lady that doesn't even take lunch hours. Okay, so in all fairness, we need to get that taken care of, and we need to also, as part of this job, would be getting us lined up, started for our accreditation. Now, I know that could be a word that scares people, but accreditation is nothing more than meeting industry best practices. That's all it is. You could take the accreditation standards and never get accredited. If you would just follow those standards, you would have your liability be reduced, and you would be a lot better off, and you would be assured. The question that comes up all the time, is your 911 system doing a good job? Well, how do you answer that? Well, I guess. Well, do you meet all the industry best practices on the training, the policy procedures, and it goes on and on and on. Backup, redundancy, all those things that are required. So that's what this position would be very helpful for. We're just really struggling now to do the existing work and try to be more proactive. That's what this is. This position really is one of being proactive and trying to move forward and meet industry best practices. Okay? If you have any questions on this, I guess feel free to answer. Okay, okay. I might not be able to answer them.
We'll get stuck.
Part of the administrative assistant's job would be, I cut it off, with purchasing, helping with purchasing that goes on there, special annual projects and reports. We should be doing an annual report. We're not getting one done. We should be doing biannual reports. We should be doing that. All those reports and analysis that's required as industry best practice will help us to do a better job. An example of that is we just refined our telephone data, and we were able to go even further by examining that, analyzing it, that our actual hours where our calls, we struggle to answer our calls within a good time period, acceptable time period. We were able to break it down by shift, by operator position, by day, and all of that analysis is really helping us right now in our minimum staffing. We have minimum staffing level set now, and we're able to apply that so that we get the most out of that, the staffing. Ensures compliance with internationally recognized standards for public safety communications. The more future budget items that we're putting these out here for future that you need to be aware of, or we think you need to be aware of, is the Omaha Police Department 5th Precinct. That will require another dispatcher on every shift. They hope to be operational in 2019. That's the latest thing I had from the police department in the city of Omaha. Early 19. We need to have those dispatcher staff on in 18 so we could get them hired, trained, and ready. You certainly don't want to hire new people when they have just opening a new precinct that doesn't know the geography, the policy procedures, and the system. So the money is listed there, the $274,060 salary only. Operations equipment will be required. It's for the radio and computer-aided dispatch. This is just to have another position there, another dispatcher to have the computer-aided dispatch, and the telephone system there is approximately $225,000. The City of Omaha has been notified of this and are aware of the cost. Okay, a regional microwave system replacement. We have a microwave system that operates between Sarpy, Washington, Douglas, and Pottawatomie counties. By having that microwave system, we're able to reduce a lot of telephone lines. And it's a great cost saving over time. It's much faster, and it allows our computer-aided dispatch system between those counties to be shared. And by the virtue of that sharing, there's a considerable savings in that, what we all pay on that. But because the microwave system has been in place, it's reaching its end-of-life status on the radios that power the system in 2 years. So in the coming 2 years, at that time, we're going to have to replace the radio system. The total project is $475,000 with $120,000 communication center responsibility because we share this system. Okay. Okay, Orion radio system. I think we all know a little bit about that. We met about and talked a little bit about that. There's been some good progress in that with that system. All the members want to stay intact, and the group has decided to try to maintain that Orion group in place. And with OPPD has decided that they can, in the future, past 2017, they can no longer provide our master site and Orion Tower site support. By master site, that's the master controller. That's the controller of a trunked radio system. It's really the guts, and where all the brain is there. And our Orion Tower sites are roughly 11 or 12 tower sites. Right now, we're have an interlocal agreement that OPPD provides the support for the master site and all of the Orion Tower sites. Well, they're not able to do this. They've lost personnel. Their management has decided they want to focus into a different area, and they're willing to pay for that master site and maintenance support and have someone else do it. So the choices are that Douglas County would assume responsibility for the master site and tower sites, or a third-party vendor such as Motorola would be contracted for master site and Orion Tower maintenance and support. Motorola will then contract the actual maintenance support out to another vendor. Next slide will show you that it's definitely not the choice of Orion to have it a third-party vendor do this. Because of the issue, we've got constant Motorola contracts to worry about every year, negotiate, and the futures of that are always difficult unless you have a long-term agreement, which Teresa's been working on for us. But you also lose that local control. If we hire Motorola, who then hires another vendor to do repair, it'd be different if we were selling bread or transporting bread. This is public safety. And the same with OPPD. It's life safety. When their power goes out or their tower site goes out, you really don't want to give up that local control of it. Now, this would involve the county having to hire original staff or some additional staff, but as we're speaking right now, we're meeting and discussing that. We think that it could be the revenue could cover those additional staffs, the vast, vast majority of us, the county, taking on support of it. So the current Orion site is another issue for us, is located at the OPPD facilities at Jones Place in Omaha. Due to anticipated future facility limitations at OPPD offices, they expect in the next 2 years they're going to get pushed out of there. They're going to, with the medical facilities and things in the area, the planning from the city and everything is looking like they're going to have to leave that site. If that happens, we'll have to find a new home for the master site. Well, the master site originally was owned by Douglas County and was located at the Douglas County Communication Center. That could be easily moved back there. And we're talking about that now, doing that, but that will be done sometime in the next 2 years. That's our expectation on that. Exact moving costs are yet to be determined, but those costs, again, would be shared by Orion members. So it isn't just Douglas County that would be involved in the responsibility of moving it as far as the financials. And I think, in just my opinion, I think that could be a benefit to everyone by doing that. And that equipment already existed, and we're going to have a facility to house that already at the communications center where it exists now. So it would be a good, I think it would be a good marriage. Okay, and then we've got it here, our budget detail, total head count, 15-16 had 67, and 69 actually now, 75 are authorized. We have 3 people that are just completing training right now that were to fill spots we have, And the additional five are being hired at this time. We hope to start interviews next week or two, and interviewing for those. And those people would be helping with our call taking. So, and our 17-18 budget, of course, it goes up by the two we talked about there, the technical person for the new FITS building and the administrative assistant. And but there again, these numbers do not include the fire dispatcher positions we were hoping to get. I'm not sure where that's going yet. I guess it's no. But there's expenses listed for 15-16, 16-17, and 17-18. I don't have to read those off to you. I'm sure you can see them. There is a definite. It went up and it's going to go up in 17-18. So revenues, we don't have any there. Now on the department funds, when you go to other funds, wireline 911, we're going to get in $1 million in 15-16, $1 million in 16-17, and $1 million in 17-18. And on the wireless 911 fund, there's with our formula that we get from the state 911 fund, it's $270,200 for the 15-16, 16-17, and 17-18. And other reimbursements we get, you can see a list there. 15-16, it was $280,193, and 16-17 is $312,918, and 17-18 $376,700. And I think that I probably went through that pretty fast on the numbers. Any questions?
Some questions here, Commissioner Cavanaugh.
Thank you. I would just note in passing that the authorized personnel level for 16-17 was 75. The actual personnel level for that fiscal year appears to be 69. The requested budget level for FY 17-18 is 77. I don't know, but it would seem to me that the 8 FTE difference between 69 actual and 75 authorized might result in some savings for FY 16-17 if in fact those positions were budgeted for that year. And it appears that the bulk of the request for increase is for personnel costs. Is that right?
That's correct.
And
I can tell you this budget is was formulated using our current contracts numbers, because we do not have solidified numbers yet for contracts, such as our Motorola contracts. Teresa is hopefully getting those almost to the end, but so we're using previous year's contract numbers. There could be a small amount of change there, but you're right. You're right. The difference is in the personnel,
right,
for the most part.
And those personnel were budgeted in the fiscal year at those levels, right?
Not for the whole year. The assumption when the board approved it about a year ago, those incremental 5 positions, the assumption was they would start April 1st, and there's been a delay in that.
Why?
The process of hiring the people has been not advantageous for us.
Okay. But those funds still were budgeted and not expended, right?
Yes, but we also are, by virtue of our minimum staffing levels that I set when I came in, which required a minimum of call takers. That's where our problem is answering calls in a timely manner. That has amounted overtime, and we've had some overtime that has made up that part of that difference.
Right. And you're before us today because your budget request exceeds the finance director's guidelines, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So
he's a pretty mean guy.
Yeah. So your budget request increase totals how much in dollars?
I'd have to, the difference between the 6,830,396 and the 6,745,349. I can get a calculator quick.
Well, it'd be sure
Oh, I'm
great
sorry.
to have that number actually in your report.
Yeah, the target was 6,629,756, and we're gonna, with that budget request, is $6,830,396, and I don't have that difference right offhand. Yeah, I haven't looked at the difference.
Okay, I'll figure it out myself.
I have some of the budget numbers there. For communications, their target with all the adjustments was about 6.6 million, and so they're coming in about 6.8 million. So the request is 200,000 over the target. But to kind of relay how this process went, Dave presented all these alternatives to myself, to the city finance director, and to the mayor's chief of staff, and he took us all through it. And then I had subsequent discussions with the city, given that they fund 85% of it, and they kind of, we all agreed to the scenario where we would put money in the budget for the increased technical and administrative person in the Motorola service contracts, but hold off for a while, at least this year, on the fire dispatch, the 6 incremental fire dispatchers. And so, like I say, the city is basically in agreement with this number as presented.
Okay.
And to answer your question, the county's cost increased would increase $30,741.
Of the 200,000 increase, 30,740 is Douglas County.
$741 is the Douglas County portion of the increase.
15%.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. I know it's not great news, and I certainly don't like to be the bearer of bad news, but I also know you're counting on me to tell you what is needed. So,
Commissioner Boyle.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask a couple of things that are really none of my business, but you talked about the problem of moving, the technical problem of moving the equipment and so forth, and how difficult. Is it possible for us to use to forward calls to Sarpy or Pottawatomie County as if our system was down during that period of time? I just asked that. It's none of my, I don't need a big answer. I just kind of.
Go ahead, Kathy. Go ahead. I
Good
want to be
morning.
sure.
I'm Kathy Allen, Deputy Director.
Okay.
And right now, we could do that, or we could also use our backup center.
Okay.
During that
Technically
transition.
possible.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I
And
asked.
they'll start over there slowly and start bringing everything up, and there will be dual answers.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to ask you to do, because I have to leave in a few minutes, but I wanted to ask if, do we have the right percentage? I mean, is it still 85-15, or is it more like 98-2? When you said we had 60,000 calls or whatever it was a month or something, are they Omaha? Is there any way to attribute those to the source?
It comes as the county, any place
Okay.
in the county.
All right. Okay. That's
But
fine.
if you look at the population and the territory, of course, the vast majority of them are going to be City of Omaha
Okay.
related calls.
Just asking if
Sure.
that
Good question.
85-15 needs to be adjusted.
And I wanted Kathy to answer that also, because yes, we can pass our calls to other centers, but the problem is if we do, we would flood them.
Okay.
We would just they just don't have the staffs at all to accommodate that.
Well, that's like I said, it's none of my business.
No, I'm open to answer anything that you have questions about.
Well, great presentation, I think.
Commissioner Duda.
Thank you. It is a good presentation. We used to tie it directly to the population. When we first wrote the agreement, every year we'd look at the population and say, okay, each entity is paying this % this year. And finally, just for the sake of budgeting and being able to anticipate a little bit, both sides agreed, let's just put it at 85 and 15. That's about what the city is population-wise of the county. So that's the basis for that, and we decided to quit fidgeting with that figure anymore. It is a good presentation. You got a lot of interesting and legitimate needs. Although, as you well know, with Omaha paying 85% of it, they're kind of in the driver's seat on this one. This is the one part of the budget that we have to do in conjunction with Omaha, and not much point in our funding the 15% of something they're not going to do the 85% of. So
I understand that, but it's just something that's out there, and there's a serious need to get our supervisors to be supervisors as we move forward. Taking our operations and placing in a new facility is wonderful, and everyone is looking forward to it. But if we carry over the same operational limitations, that isn't going to allow us to do a better job. I can buy all the computers I want in the world and wonderful telephone systems. They can't answer the calls and use their head and use discretion and things like that. So I totally understand what you're saying, but I would be remiss if I wouldn't bring these needs out to you, because it's definitely deeply involved in our service levels. I don't want to have people call up and say that no one ever answered my 911 call.
Sure, of course.
And maybe there's further discussion between now and the time we actually do budgeting that we could revisit that information. I mean, again, if there's increased need on their part, then, you know, unfortunately, that's how it is, then they should step up as well. So I think we need to further those conversations until it's a final.
I did, just for your information, I did have a meeting yesterday with the mayor. It was my first meet and greet since I've been here. And there was interest on their part to become more knowledgeable on our budget requests, other than pretty much now it's the finance directors decide whether they can fund it or not. And I suggested that more information be presented to their council as to the need, so that they have more information than just saying, well, Douglas County is asking for, or 15%, and here's our 85%. Here we go.
But that should go through the user group too.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And it's just an informational thing, but I think it's important that they understand the need.
Right.
Rather than just, and I have nothing against the finance people making the decision whatsoever, and God bless them. But there are, when it comes to public safety, and you'll hear every police, fire, and EMS person come up here and tell you, sometimes it's real important to get those service a priority.
Right. All right. Well,
so, but I know I'm speaking to the choir.
No, continue the discussions.
Okay.
Okay. With that, that is it for the budget presentation, so thank you. We do have to go back very quickly before our last committee item and revisit the supplements. We need a motion to approve the salary adjustment account for future increases for the EULA contract for corrections.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Commission.
How much is that?
That was 107,000. 27,000. Okay. No further questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
The last is the Human Resources, the weekly personnel report from Civil Service, and that's as presented unless there's any questions. And then the 2017 legislative update, and we have our wonderful lobbyists here with us today to give us our kind of end report of how it went and how it didn't, or the good, bad, and the ugly. Hi.
Madam Chair, Mike Kelly, good morning, or is it afternoon? The Commissioner Morgan said to me, do I miss being on the county board? And I said, well, you guys have had 2 years worth of my meetings this morning. My role here this morning is going to be very brief. As you all know, as I get into the back nine of my endeavors, I used to be a player manager in Lincoln. Now I'm more just a manager, and the players I'm going to introduce them here in a second. But I did want to take this opportunity to thank the board. It's very much an honor distinct honor and privilege to represent Douglas County. We've been doing it for a long time, and believe me, it really is an honor. Also want to thank your great staff, all of them, from Patrick, Joe, everybody. We get great communication from everybody, elected officials and their staffs as well. So with that, I just want to say, had a long morning, so we'll move on, but I'd like to introduce Sean and Julia. And I'm biased, but for my money, they're as good as it gets down there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello.
Good morning, Madam Chair and
Hello.
Commissioners. Sean Kelly. For the record, I'd like to echo Mike's statements. Thanks to the commissioners, directors, and staff throughout the legislative session. We have to rely upon you for testimony, fiscal notes. Marcos probably has nightmares about all those he has to compile, and providing information on the fly. As you all know, it's very quick when we need information. We need it yesterday, and everybody's been great to support us, and can't do our jobs effectively without your support. So thank you. As you know, the legislature adjourns today, the 86th legislative day. They'll be adjourning sine die this afternoon, which we're thrilled about. We finished 4 days early. As many folks probably wonder, how is that possible when we had 30 days of debate on the rules, and I think it's in large part due to Speaker Scheer's filibuster rule, and that is, if it was a controversial bill, he would allow 3 hours of debate and then pull it from the legislative agenda, and the sponsoring senator would have to show the speaker that they had 33 cloture votes to put it back on the schedule. So that happened to 10 priority bills, so that's 30 hours of legislative debate that was saved, and I think that about adds up to 4 days of legislative debate. It was interesting. That new policy actually made those controversial debates better because there was a limited amount of time, and so the proponents and opponents took that time to actually get to the meat of their arguments and the reason why they supported or opposed the bill, as opposed to just figuring out a way to waste 6 to 8 hours on general file and get to that cloture vote. Not surprising, with a $1 billion shortfall this session was all about the budget, so much that the legislature passed 2 budgets. So the deficit budget bill and then the mainline budget, which ran into difficulty since my time lobbying. It was the most challenging budget I've seen to get passed. But eventually they did do it. Rundown just to the numbers. In total, 667 legislative bills introduced. Of those, 170 became law. High number due to consent calendar. Of the 107 priority bills, 71 priority bills were passed. One was passed and then vetoed and failed to override that veto. From a board perspective, one item on the priority, 20 of those were filibustered. So, and no bill that was filibustered from general file on passed. So as you know, anytime there's a filibuster, it's difficult to overcome. But especially with this legislative makeup, it's really hard to get 33 votes on anything, especially more than once. From the board's perspective, 21 legislative bills or resolutions from the Douglas County Board. 7 of those received an outcome this session. The 14 others will be holdovers for next session. The scorecard, if you will, 3 positive outcomes, 3 negative, and 1 neutral. The highlights or the wins were LB 152, which is the Register of Deeds fee that sunset was lifted. LB 333, which was an unfunded mandate regarding care for the disabled. That was an ongoing discussion throughout the legislative session, meetings back and forth literally for months. Fortunately, nothing was passed that impacted an unfunded mandate to counties, which would have been about $4 million a year statewide. Voter ID bill was killed. The lowlights were the 2 budget bills, which there are resolutions opposed to. Of course, it's quite the challenge to defeat a budget, and those budgets passed. And last, that was a loss, was Senator McAllister's Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program failed to advance with 24 votes on general file. One item that I characterize as a neutral position for us was the adding a 6th judge in juvenile court in Douglas County. I think the official resolution was opposed to the 7th judge, which Senator Christ ultimately brought from 7 to 6 at really our request. So we appreciated his willingness to work with us on that item. So that's the rundown of our session. We'll stand for any questions you may have.
Commissioner Morgan.
Well, what your father said is very accurate, that we couldn't do better, in my opinion, with you and Julie doing your work. And I hear it from state senators and others, and I just want to thank you, as I've said a few years ago when you come before this board, how much I appreciate the work you do and working with Marcos. We appreciate what Marcos does, and he keeps us updated. But I really thank you for your patience, disciplines in working through that great body down there. So thanks a lot for the service.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle.
I want to echo that too. It's been a terrific improvement having Julie on board. Just kidding. But
it's true.
Wonderful addition. You're a great team, and of course your dad just breaks all records. I mentioned to Commissioner Borgerson how concerned I am about what's happening to the poor in our community. They seem to be sliding off the budget in large numbers, and I don't know where this is all going to end up, but the county is the one, as you well know, that picks up the care of those who need care. And so I know the national administration is telling everybody, even if you're disabled, are you really that disabled? Can't you get a job? You know, it's going to be a tough deal. And plus, we have the same attitude in Nebraska from our governor, unfortunately. So I don't know where that all ends up, but it's going to be the county's going to have to step up and take care of the people who need help. So, and I know you know that, and so I plant that seed, which it's already been in your mind, I know. So,
thank you.
Figure it out for us, will you?
Do our best.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I'd just like to say a good job, John and Mike, Julia, in a difficult session, and this is probably as good as it gets. So, thanks for all your hard work.
Thanks.
Well, and I'll echo that. I mean, the conversations that we have ongoing throughout the session are sometimes very spirited and hard, and but fun too. And you guys do a great job, and we really do appreciate that. I did want to make one comment on the overrides for the provider rates. Supposedly DHHS came back and said that they have, quote, money someplace, have found money in their budget to cover some of those, which I find curious, but we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But the one thing I think with this governor, I gotta say, is he was much more keenly aware and willing to have a discussion with us in regards to unfunded mandates. And that became very clear with LB 333, where they were going to kind of pass on that by eliminating the state disability program, and we worked real hard and have more work to do, but he's at least willing, not that we always agree with what the end result is, but he was at least agreeable to sit down and talk about those unfunded mandates. And you know, I thank you guys for really pressing that issue as we talked some of those through. So
yeah, to your first point, I had some correspondence with the Legislative Fiscal Office yesterday, and they had the same understanding from the Department of Health and Human Services on provider rates. They're looking forward to getting it in writing to see what that all means. And one item I did leave out is the legislative resolutions, the interim studies. Senator Smith has a property tax one, which he gave us permission to include any Turk issues or property tax exemptions, and Senator Wayne introduced ordinance authority for counties on our request.
Right. Okay. We'll be busy. Commissioner Boyle.
Last thing I want to mention to you is I read this morning's paper that Senator Steve Erdman is going to do something with the petition drive. Well, you won't like this, but Senator Erdman's a very good friend of mine, former county commissioner, very conservative, and we met on a lot of issues that we agreed on. I sent him a text at 6:15 this morning and said, count me in. So I want to be, if there's going to be something done to change the system, Douglas County should participate. So I hope that we can get in there and have some say. I think he's a really good state senator, and I think he's a great commissioner. So I'm looking forward to working with him.
Yeah, and I think he may be having a press conference right now in Lincoln.
What's that?
He may be having a press conference right now.
Yeah,
maybe
okay, well, we'll
detailing
find
that,
out
so
what he
we'll
wants to
find
do.
out what he wants to do.
Probably want to cut property taxes in the urban counties.
Okay, well, thank you again, for all the work that you do, and you did a good job this year for us.
Thank you.
always.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks.
you. With that, I don't think we have need for an executive session.
Litigation and collective bargaining. Or contract negotiations.
Okay, wait a minute. We have collective, we have union.
Litigation and contract negotiations.
Litigation, okay. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Just to announce that immediately following the meeting, we'll have an administrative services meeting shortly. And it's not going to go long, but we are going to give an update on the floor plan at the Fitzgerald Center that 911 referred to earlier.
Commissioner Morgan, you asked for a point of privilege.
I'd just like to recognize, maybe have a moment of silence on the death of Ed Warren, who I had worked with on a number of things, and just what an outstanding individual and public servant he was. And maybe we could prepare a resolution for in a couple of weeks to get to his family. And that Lou Gehrig disease, ALS, I had a secretary that had that. Such a tragic situation. So if we could. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair.
And the only thing I wanted to add was that please keep Manchester, England in our thoughts and prayers as well. What a horrible, terrific event that occurred over there, and so senseless, and again, just kind of brings us back to just how violent our world is these days, and just keep all of them in your prayers and thoughts as well. Thanks. All right, so I need a motion to go into executive session for litigation and negotiations.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Morgan, seconded by Commissioner Boyle. Please vote.
Hey, Jim.
Motion passes.
Yes.
Yes, motion passes. Yes.